Okay. Okay, good evening, everybody. It's 6 o'clock and I call the special meeting, the Complete Streets Commission, open. Before we get started, let's do a roll call to establish quorum. What, you want to call,
Yeah. Commissioner Banerjee, she's absent. Chair Venkatraman,
yeah, I'm here?
Commissioner Oye, looks like she's absent. Commissioner Fieka.
Here.
Vice Chair Katz. Here. He just. Commissioner Schneider. Here. And Commissioner Helms.
Here.
Of course.
Okay, great. Let's see, before we get started on the agenda items, I'd like to invite people from the public who may want to make comments on an item that's not on the agenda. That's not on the agenda? Yes. Do you have a comment?
Where should I stand? I haven't pulled it out yet. She told me to do, but mine, Caroline.
Okay, I'll call. Yeah, all right, Caroline, come on in, put your name, and you have 3 minutes.
And where should I stand?
That's closer. Yeah, that's good there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you all being here, so involved. I'm in a parent group at the high school. We're trying to encourage the students to use more active transportation. And I know that like on some levels, like I'm a biker, and I know a lot of you are. Like, oh, this e-bikes and stuff like that, they're kind of obnoxious, but I think our future is going to need to be embracing micro-mobility. And so what I'd like to encourage the city and the commissioners is to be thinking about how to work with the surrounding cities. And, you know, like in Mountain View, kids who are coming along Ringstorff, along San Antonio Road, you know, all these different feeder streets. How can we all work together to make this a safer route into Los Altos? And I think if we do that, we're going to be able to decrease the number of cars, which I think is one of the issues here. And also this morning, I biked to work, and I don't know if you noticed it, but you could hear the birds singing, right? Because the kids were on break. And when is the last time you were in a place or lived in a place where you could hear the mockingbirds and, you know, all those things at 8:30 in the morning? So I really want you to hold that idea in your minds as we're all thinking about this and thinking about how you can all work with the other cities and with our own city to improve active transportation, even if it's, you know, scooters and mopeds and things like that that are smaller and can be and fit on the campus. So that is really what I just wanted to say. And I really appreciate everybody being here.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments not on the agenda? Okay, right, all right, so let's get to the first item on the agenda, the Jardine Drive redesign project. I'm gonna invite city staff, or I guess Ida, the Public Works Director, to make a comment, and then the city staff should make a presentation.
Good evening, CSE Chair Venkatraman and Commissioners. I am Director Fairman in Public Works. Here with me tonight is the Transportation Division team and our licensed traffic engineer, Dunia Amiri from AIM Engineering Consultants. We took feedback from the Complete Streets Commission and the community, and our consultant will present the recommended option for the redesign of Jardine Drive tonight. Tonight is the 4th meeting regarding Jardine Drive. At the regular CSC meeting on November 23rd, staff listened to all the concerns and feedback from the residents and the school. Redesign options were prepared during December 2023 and posted to the city's webpage before the community meeting of January 25th, 2024, that took place here in the community center. Our traffic engineer consultant presented the 3 options in great detail, and the residents and school had an opportunity to voice their opinions at the meeting and by email to our staff CSE liaison, Art Williams. our public information officer sent out announcement of the second meeting through various social channels. The third meeting was the regular CSE meeting of January 31st, where the same options were presented by our consultant in great detail to the CSE for discussion and direction to staff. At this third meeting in January 31st, some of the comments from the CSE to staff were, start with the problem statement. Make the redesign simple since the existing condition of Jardine Drive has too much going on. The best solution is by subtraction, not by addition. Make the redesign safer than the existing condition. The new design needs to include bikes, cars, and pedestrians, but we need data. Please address safety concerns. Please place A-frame signs on Jardine Drive to notify the community of upcoming meetings related to Jardine Drive. The recommended redesign that Ms. Amiri will present addresses the feedback. It focuses on safety and complies with the current law. She will cover all the information during her presentation in great detail. If the CSE supports and recommends the proposed redesign that will be presented tonight, the CSE can provide recommendation to staff to proceed with the implementation of this design, and there will not need to be formation of an ad hoc subcommittee. If the CSE does not recommend or support the recommended redesign tonight, the CSE has the option of forming an ad hoc subcommittee since it is a discussion item on the agenda. Thank you, and with this, I'll now pass it on to Donia Amiri. Thank you.
Good evening. My screen first up. CSE Chair and Commissioners and the community. Tonight, I would like to go over, and if my volume is low, first of all, I'd like to apologize. Please, someone signal louder and I'll go louder. Tonight, we're here and we're as a follow-up to some of the other previous sessions we've had regarding Jardine Drive. And I'd like to go over some of the feedback we've heard so far. In tonight's presentation, I hope we dive into the comments that we heard last time and present a recommended design that accommodates as much as possible the different things that we've heard and what can be done on Jardine Drive. My name is Donia Amiri with AIM Engineering Consultant. I'm a traffic engineer, and looking forward to going through this with everyone here tonight. A quick presentation outline here for tonight will be, number one will be a big picture overview of this region, which includes our safe routes to school map of the area and just a regional area of our recommended routes for mobility for safe routes to school recommendations already in place. The second thing would be reviewing the current conditions on Jardine Drive and a problem statement. And third will be going, just introducing the traffic data that we have been able to collect. And number four is a high-level overview of the recommended plan, followed by cross sections that are already available on the wall, but the two sections. And then I would like to go really slow after kind of like the high overview, where we will look at each side street and kind of start from one end of Jardine to the end and kind of look at it in great detail. And lastly, a quick timeline and a question and answer session. Okay. This is the Safe Routes to School plan for the area. There's a copy of it behind me. It's been on our website. And the focus of this slide here is to basically show the recommended, which are the routes for connection to the different schools around this area, which includes Santa Rita Elementary School, Egan Junior High, Bowles Charter, Los Saltos High School in the middle, and Almond Elementary on the southeastern side. This is important slide for us to kind of take a minute and look at how Jardine Drive fits into the big picture of the region as it connects and how it connects to El Camino Real and the other side streets that lead to throughout the city, including North San Antonio, El Monte, and all the other collector streets in the region. With that, I would like to also mention that Safe Routes to School is the implementation, I should say, of the Safe Routes to School plans is one of the City Council's highest priorities. And the reason why it's such a high priority is that the recommended Safe Routes to School path goal is to make it easier and safer for pedestrians, students, families to navigate the city streets and be able to safely move around and make it to their destination, ideally by foot or bicycle. And third would be by vehicle, and later on as the city grows through the use of transit and other modes of transportation that we just heard. And staff understands this #1 priority for City Council. So as we look into the Jardine Drive redesign concept plans, and we've looked at the concept plans, but tonight's recommended plan, I would like us to kind of pay attention that the Jardine Drive section that we're talking about is from Valencia to Alicia. So it's this section right here in the middle. And it is important. It is part of a larger network. And since our last sessions, we've spent more time looking at the Safe Routes to School plans that have been developed by a previous planning team, a consultant to the city who has made recommendations where additional improvements would make it safer to the various schools around the city. And that includes stop control, additional striping, high visibility crosswalks, in some cases even traffic signals are being recommended, and altogether just building a network one by one that kind of does what we're seeing right here, which is all the blue segments, to kind of truly line up with each other and be connected. And for any resident or student who's traveling, whether regardless of what age they are, they're feeling safe on our city streets, and they're able to get to their destination safe and independently. And we, as an agency, basically provide that infrastructure for them to do that in that in that capacity. I'll come back to this slide as I have a couple points that relate to this, but I'll just kind of move on. The condition that we have right now on Jardine Drive is shown in this picture. I've showed this picture in my previous presentation as well. I thought that this does a really good job just showing the sidewalk, vertical, a current concrete sidewalk, vertical curb, a bike lane, a buffer space, a parking lane with every other spot reserved for loading and parking, about a 10-foot travel lane, a second travel lane with sharrows for the bicyclists, and the edge line, it goes right to the edge of pavement. So the travel lane just ends right where pavement ends. This is our current condition on Jardine Drive. We're all aware of it. This is what has brought this feedback and from the community, from the students, from the high school, from the police department as well, in terms of what they're seeing in terms of pedestrian and vehicle behavior, navigation of this corridor. And I guess simply putting it, our problem statement is that the current street configuration of Jardine Drive has created the following problems, at least that we've verified. We have reports of it. We've kind of heard from the community in the previous meeting. But what we're seeing right now with the current condition is that there's unsafe pedestrian behavior, and basically there's gaps on the sidewalk infrastructure or facilities. Part of the street has a sidewalk, part of it is unmarked. the residents, the students, upon arrival or departure, they're, kind of navigating kind of freestyle and, their unsafe behaviors, are basically putting them at risk with vehicles, with bicyclists, and, it's just not also just the students that we, notice having unsafe behaviors. Because the facilities are not built out and the edge line on the north side of Jardine basically just ends where the pavement ends. They have, the pedestrians have no choice if they want to, if they choose to be on that side to get onto the pavement, which is a travel lane, until they get to a point where they could connect. So there is a sidewalk gap, there is a connection gap, resulting in the unsafe pedestrian behavior that we're currently seeing. Additionally, there's unsafe driver behavior on the street as well, on the corridor. Not only is it during arrival and departure times, which, I'll get into more details of what we're seeing, out there, but, the way the road has been split up, the way it's designed right now, it's off-centered, it's skewed, and the drivers on the north, side are right up to the edge, and so the driver behavior throughout the day is, a little less severe as what we're seeing in the morning and afternoon drop-offs, including, what we're seeing is parents, dropping off students in the middle of a travel lane. They're just coming to an abrupt stop, dropping off a kid that's navigating between, other cars coming in the opposite direction or cars that are behind them. Parents or drivers are making illegal U-turns and, parking on the corners, blocking visibility and speeding. So, we're seeing pedestrian behavior issues, driver behavior issues, and facility-wise, we know that there's no shoulder or bike lane on the north side, and that issue has created, a limitation to where bikes can safely travel. I know right now we have Sharrows, and they're sharing the road, in that direction, but that lack of a shoulder has created other, problems on the north side. The current configuration, as I showed in the previous picture, has moved the parking lane to the, towards the center line to buffer and provide a physical barrier for the cycle track, which is, it does add safety for the cyclists, on the, south side near the high school. However, because the street, dimensions and the size of the width of the street that's available, the parked cars and their kind of their door swing and the travel lane and the, students or parents or teachers getting out of the vehicles to get onto the sidewalk has, created additional safety concerns, and, all in all, the problem statement is multifaceted with pedestrian, vehicle, and actual physical design of the street. And, altogether, that is the problem we're trying to solve in a redesign. We want to present a design that, as we've heard before, simplifies what's out there, yet does accommodate what the behaviors that we're seeing and how to handle, the movement of pedestrians or students during the hours that they are arriving, the hours that the students are leaving, understand where are they coming from. We've done extensive, meetings with the high school, principal, vice principal, and we're getting information, as soon as they have it in terms of their construction project. And basically, the plans for the high school makes a really big, impact on where would a student go if they were walking, what path would they really travel, even if we did open this other gate or created all these fancy places for them to go through, where would they actually go? And let's design for the actually, the practical method or path for the students and the cyclists, getting on campus. And this recommended design has, taken all of that into consideration and hopes to kind of address the problem statement I just went over. And as part of our evaluation, what we did do is, we hired Quality Counts. They're a national company, to come out, and they installed these little cameras. I'm not sure if anyone noticed them out there. They're very discreet. And, we asked for them to basically look at border the whole high school, all the intersections that were starting at Valencia and Jardine, Panchita, Jardine, Los Niños and Jardine, Disco, Casita, Alicia, both of the Alicia side streets, as well as the two corner streets on Almond, Alicia and Almond and Valencia and Almond. And they were asked to basically collect data in the morning and in the afternoon. We didn't want just volumes, we wanted turning movement counts, which basically we wanted information about how many rights and lefts and how many pedestrians versus cyclists and transit or trucks were moving throughout these 9 locations at the 2 times that the cameras were up. And so we did get the results back. Additionally, since there's cameras, we were able to get a recording, which is basically face down just at the intersection, and we're able to get a little bit more context to the numbers we're seeing. And in review of the data that we collected from traffic counts, as staff and as a traffic engineer, it was very uncomfortable watching the behavior live. I mean, we've seen parts of it, but maybe, when our field visits, we've seen it, but when you're looking at 9 locations kind of at the same time, and you're looking at it in a orchestrated together during those windows, it is extremely unsafe. Traffic counts staff that reviewed the videos with us, they also had very discomforting comments about their review of the behaviors that we witnessed in all those videos that we had for the 9 locations. So the urgency and the urgency of addressing this problem is pretty serious after we got the data even more than what we've seen and had records of beforehand. Additionally, we recognize that it is not one type of a user that's misbehaving per se, to say it's just the pedestrians or it's just the cyclists, it's just the drivers that are not obeying the law. It's all together, everyone is just doing whatever they feel like, basically, and where they feel like it's safe, they're making turns. And so with the traffic counts that we've collected, we are more sure that this recommended design will at least take care of some of the issues that we're seeing, and it does create some separations between the different users. And like anything else, no one design is going to be perfect in every way possible. And as we understand it, with back to the earlier diagram of the region, we are talking about one segment, the Jardine segment, but as a network, we're larger than Jardine. So a design that fits the neighborhood is more necessary than something that is so out of the ordinary, robust and overkill and just wouldn't suit the neighborhood or connect. We wouldn't be able to do what we're doing if we even had a very over-the-top design idea. We don't have the time and the resources to immediately implement that to all those blue segments you saw on our region map. So with that, I will move on to, so the recommended design, this is a very high level. Like I said, I will go into small sections one by one. Will definitely take time, and I have broken my slide into, side street, but overall, I just wanted to show one snapshot of what's happening. So as you familiarize yourself, you see what stands out or and it's kind of hard to see what stands out. So overall, you'll see that we are adding the no stopping at any time signs at all the corners. And this was noticed in our traffic data as well. All the videos showed that both pedestrians and vehicles are kind of hugging and circling around those corners. It's blocking visibility, people are not able to turn, and they're just idle vehicles. So with this, we hope to get PD's enforcement a little bit, more, because now it'll have the proper signage. So that's one add-on you'll see. And overall, you'll see that there's parking and there's loading zone, but we're cutting it. The tennis court in a way is dividing where the parking load is going to start and where the loading zone is going to start. So on the west end of Jardine, the parking will remain, And past the tennis court, it'll just be a loading zone during the weekdays. And then, of course, on the weekends, there's no need for loading only, so it'll just be all open parking. The little bulb out you see here is with coordination with the high school. We've heard and learned about some plans that they have for improving this tennis court gate. And with that, I think, and I'll get into it, but we're basically having an opening right into the tennis courts for the student cyclists. And with staff from the high school directing bikes and peds through the tennis courts, they are being captured earlier on. And so if this area ends up being a loading zone, hopefully there's not, at least for students, they're not in conflict with the vehicles that are turning to to load in the loading zone. And one major change or improvement or new operational addition that you guys have not seen so far is a turning restriction on Casita during the morning and afternoon drop-offs. What we were seeing is there's a lot of pedestrian bicyclist conflict right here with pedestrians and vehicles. A lot of vehicles are leaving Casita and making a turn. And there were so many near hit misses in the videos we watched. We almost couldn't watch it. It was so uncomfortable, such close calls. And I wanted, later I will kind of share a personal story about what, in cases where it's not near hit misses, other agencies, kind of what's happened near schools and how it was handled. And I'd like for us to kind of be aware of, if we don't restrict turning movements in this direction, that we have a lot of data of near hit misses. It won't be data. It may, kind of happen. So that was the overall. Overall, the street section, I think, is as such. The sidewalk is remaining. The parking that we proposed last time to be a 7-foot parking or loading zone, we have added another 2 feet to kind of accommodate the door swing and any movement from the vehicle, the driver. So the parking zone is now 9 feet wide, a 5-foot bike lane, followed by a 2-foot buffer, the same typical 10-foot travel lane. And we've made the north side bike lane a 6-foot bike lane, which is a foot bigger than the standard or minimums of 5 foot. But we believe the north side needs the space, and there is a lot of activity on the north side from what we see, and there is currently no sidewalk. So having the bike lane as a 6-foot bike lane is the proposed recommendation. And this section you haven't seen before, what this is at the 2 points where students are entering the school, we wanted to limit parking before and after that entrance point. That way a cyclist on a student on a bike, in the bike lane could make that turn onto the campus without having to compete with vehicles parking in front of them or behind them by at least 20 feet. And originally we had 3 points for students to enter: the baseball field, the tennis courts, and the main east driveway. In a recent conversation with the high school, we learned that the long-term plans for the baseball field and the modular buildings that are in the back are only about a year or two away from being completed. The modular buildings will be removed, and it would just remain open. So when I was, with that in mind and understanding that students will not go to a path that does not lead to their classrooms, especially if they're running late, then the best thing is to invest in the tennis court gate opening and maybe install a driveway or ramp and limit cars from entering. So basically the students that are riding to school on Jardine could use 2 points of access to get onto the school. The first one we hope they use with the support of the school staff and kind of guidance is the tennis courts. if the students come in the morning using the tennis courts and, navigate to wherever the bike racks are, and they leave using the main entrance, it kind of works well with this proposed parking and loading zone where the conflicts are a little bit less. So we did chat with the high school and we talked about education material for the students and the parents, at least starting this year, and making it a regular kind of pushing information to the parents and the students as far as how the school wants them to enter and leave. So this cross section is just simply the 2 points that we've provided red curbs so that bicyclists and vehicles are not in conflict when they're trying to make a right turn to get into the school. Okay, so I will now break down this overall plan by going through Valencia and Panchita first. And I'll kind of continue that for all of the streets till we get to Alicia. I hope you could see this. Okay. So on Valencia, we had discussed we had hatching over here for a side, a space for the pedestrians when they cross. We went out and basically it's a simple line work right now, and that kind of does the job. We don't need to add more hatching here. We did hear from the residents here that they would rather have less striping in this area. So this was one that we could have reduced the striping, and we did. And the ladder crosswalk, high visibility crosswalk, has been brought up before. And I do want to make a point that the distance from this intersection, this crosswalk to the opening of the school's property, which is a baseball field, it is an access point to the school, is within the distance that all the crosswalks must be yellow high visibility crosswalks.
But didn't you just say that the baseball field is not going to be used as an entry point?
Provide you time for making public comments. Thank you, appreciate it.
The distance to the baseball field, regardless, even past the baseball field, it falls within any of the access points to the school. And as a city and throughout town and just all safe routes to school plans, high visibility crosswalks are a safety addition to make it safer for people to be seen as they're walking and crossing the street, especially in a city that is not very well lit. It is an important improvement to make as much as possible, even if, even beyond safe routes to school paths. Even other white crosswalks should be ladder and high visibility. In this case, like I mentioned on the previous slide, the locations that fall within safe routes to school includes 9 locations. Valencia and Jardine is one of them, and this is our safe routes to school path. The ladder stripe crosswalk is just a standard improvement, and so that is recommended here. The little bulb outs are already there, so we're just showing the hatching. And so the homes here, the parking remains, so there's about 5 parking spaces in this segment. And the change that you'll see, there's a 9-foot parking lane, 5-foot bike lane, 2-foot buffer, 2 10-foot and a 6-foot bike lane on the north side. This section remains the entire stint, from Valencia to Alicia. The street section and striping doesn't change. We hope that having a consistent, design like this will be predictable, easy to understand, and there's not too many changes for the users. Something that is new that I want to point out here is that this stop control at Panchita, it used to be a one-way stop out of Panchita, and then these were added in the previous project. And Panchita, as you guys saw on the main citywide kind of the safe routes to school map, Panchita is one of the main corridors, as well as a casita into Jardine. So there's probably a reason when this got installed, it lines up to this ramp, and this crosswalk was added. However, the stop it's hard to see. In the videos we saw, there's a lot of running the stops at this location. we looked at it further, we studied the videos, we went out to the field. And what's happening is that the stop sign itself is pretty far from the stop. So if the neighborhood might know that there's a stop here and they kind of come to a stop. But what we're seeing was a mix. Some people were stopping, some people were realizing it a little bit later. And the only way to make this stop visible is by limiting parking. So it just has to become visible. We cannot move the stop into the street. It's a obstruction. Obviously, it introduces other safety concerns. And so we need, at this point, it's about 20 feet to the right and left of this stop is a red curb is being introduced. And the ramp on Penchita is now being lined up better with the crosswalk, and the ramp here is getting improved so that pedestrians could, hop on and get onto the sidewalk. Another feature that's new here that we didn't share before was in there, seeing kind of the behavior has helped us understand what are drivers doing, what are pedestrians doing, and what are bicyclists doing. Since this is our parking area, we wanted the vehicles to kind of align themselves to the travel lane and not really seek an opportunity to swerve in with the pedestrians and the bicyclists to try to get a parking here. If they, if a vehicle is making a left turn, they have to align themselves and kind of pass this zone to then move into a parking. By then, the pedestrians would have crossed. The bicyclists are watching out and kind of aware of a vehicle moving in. And while I didn't show this here, the school is open and flexible and is going to continue opening this back gate on the baseball field. The high school vice principal mentioned that custodians open this gate at 6 a.m. and they close when they leave. So it is open and it is available to, for pedestrians and even bicyclists to enter even now, and at least for the next couple of years. It's just long term, we didn't really show like a permanent ramp or a driveway because the high school will be taking care of that as this is an access path. And if it turns out that this is a popular route, it could always be open. So this design accommodates for today's use and potential future. The high school is looking into the plans for this driveway. And as far as, since we don't know about it, we didn't over design this one, knowing that the tennis courts is more popular and the east driveway is more popular. And here we wanted to focus on getting the drivers to line up to the travel lane when they make this turn. Luckily, it's a controlled intersection, so you should, go in order, and there's less conflict as we'll see as we move up Jardine. But so on Penchita, again, just the no stopping anytime signs on the corners. Red to make the stop sign more visible, and blocking vehicle parking up to this baseball field, and some ballers to really discourage vehicles from stopping here. It's just kind of pretty much like make your turn, keep going, and they have a better angle, they have a better visibility looking straight down, and they're not in a conflict as much by if they were basically allowed to park here. And they may just kind of swerve in, make this a drop-off zone. So the delineators is to really help the drivers not try to illegally park and drop off. It's just this is I'm sorry, let me go back. Okay, so that was Valencia to Penchita. Parking is available on this side of Jardine. Parking is available behind the baseball field. So now we're moving on to Penchita to Los Niños, basically that, did I say tennis court? Okay, I meant baseball. Here, again, I'm just kind of showing that snippet from Penchita. This section, I just want to, like we talked about or mentioned, 9-foot parking, bike lane, a little buffer, 2 travel lanes, and a 6-foot bike lane on the north side. Parking is allowed here. We counted roughly, depending on if we use the tick marks or just let it, be unmarked, how people park, maybe about 13 parking spots here. And I think we saw about plus or minus maybe 8 or 9 on off of Valencia. And so at Los Niños, just the no stopping turns, we've talked about the center line of the side streets being kind of scooched closer to the center, to the intersection, and giving the driver a better visibility to the right and left. And here is the tennis court entrance. And this basically marks where parking stops and loading zone is available. And we as staff and even, we went back and forth on this so many times with the high school, looking at the videos, looking at our traffic counts. Just functionally, we've been out there, we're just seeing, well, what do people do? How are they using this area on the weekends? How does the evening hours look like? And removing parking altogether on the street is going to create a lot of problems for the side street. It will also create more unsafe driver behavior if they have nowhere to stop to drop off. And so for that reason, we thought what would be the easiest way to enforce, for enforcement wise, and kind of just keeping a simplified understanding east and west, or and we also looked at where are the kids coming from and where are they going from? Is the tennis courts more popular? Is the baseball field going to be more popular? We know based on traffic volumes that the east entrance is definitely the most popular. I mean, that's how the facility is set up. So that explains why the numbers are higher on the east driveway. However, we've heard from the school that the impacts on Almond, even though they have opened the horseshoe and there's traffic, there's ability for parents to drive in, drop off, and leave, that they cannot only accommodate drop-offs in the front because of the queuing that's getting built up. So breaking the drop-off ability to the front and the back of the school with multiple access points is what we believe is the best way. And this way the resident, the homes on the minor streets are getting less of a parking problem. For the few spots that, if someone arrives earlier, or, there's some parking available, there's loading closer to the main entrance, because no matter what, that the main east entrance is where most traffic will continue to arrive student-wise. So and I'll get to that section, but we made the loading zone past the tennis courts and before the tennis courts, parking only. And so the same idea exists here. So if a driver is leaving Los Niños, we would love for them to turn right and just kind of move out of the way, but there's going to, most likely they'll want to turn, and so they are turning to get into this travel lane. So the visibility, by pushing them closer to the intersection, they could see better, they could make a better decision. The green boxes in the front is kind of identifying that a cyclist might be passing through, for them to be aware of that. If they are a parent or a student driving, they know the traffic situation on Jardine. So hopefully they are making, a better decision in how they make them, they find the proper gap to make this turn. When they make this turn, again, we're hoping parents from Los Niños, whether they get a few spots here to park, or students, otherwise it's just loading only. So they're just they're passing there's no incentive for them to try to swerve here, because we'll put delineators, and they're forced to pass this tennis court entrance and pull in here to load and unload. With the school support, we hope to get the student cyclists in here so that they're not in conflict as much with the loading area. And this is what we've spent a great amount of time talking about. Can this be staffed? Is this realistic? What else can we do? Should we? And so some of the suggestions are, yes, we want to remove the post that's there. We want to look at the gate. We want to build a better driveway. So it's actually encouraged the same way that East driveway is being encouraged as an access point to the school. So if we get support and kind of educate the students, when the students are coming, we'd like to collect them off of the tennis courts on their bikes and on foot if needed. Otherwise, there's a sidewalk, which is safe. So this covers up to Los Niños to the tennis court. And this is from Los Niños to Distal, the tennis, but basically behind what's happening at the tennis courts. It's just the loading zone, pretty much. Bikes are entering through the tennis court gate and the rest is just loading. Now, the hours I do want to mention is it will remain loading zone pretty much the whole business hours for school, which is 7 to 4 p.m. Loading only, 5-minute limit. This is a standard California sign. Even the 5 minutes is a standard California sign. School day. So this is used across the state to allow people to drop off as it is a loading, and they kind of safely take off when they've completed their. And this loading area is about 18 spots. And at Distal, same thing. Just the buffer area is now going to get the no stopping signs. The center line is moved up, the green bike lanes, 6-foot bike lanes. And I see some like duplicate text here. We were working around the clock to get this prepared. Of course, I will go back as you guys have questions to any of these slides. I just want to quickly get to the end to just give you the high level what's happening, and then we can spend some more time. And so, as I mentioned, the traffic counts, our field visits, what we've heard from the students, from the parents, from the rest of the community, the casita and the east driveway is a pretty busy, hectic, unsafe, probably the most unsafe location of Jardine is this location. And so considering that, without being too dramatic and kind of, putting other physical barriers to change behavior, which is, there's things that I'm sure you've seen around that prohibits U-turns. It's just delineators right along the center line, or even across the intersection. So people are forced to go right and just continue right until, they make their way or find a place to make a U-turn to get on this side. Short of that, the next option would be kind of putting a no left turn restrictions in the morning 2 hours and 2 hours in the afternoon. We got the bell schedule from the high school. It's kind of like 30 minutes or 45, and while it's more precise, the signage, the standard signs in California, it's just better to use standard signs. So it's 7 to 9 a.m., 3 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. And so there will be a sign at the approach as someone's coming down Casita. So this driver cannot turn this way anymore in the morning or in the afternoon. This driver, when they come down Casita, they have to basically just turn right. That's it. There's no left turn. And ideally, the kids are walking and they're moving or biking to get to this east driveway, either using a crosswalk, using a bike lane. If they're driving, then they're forced to make a right turn and pretty much go all the way till they have an opening to either come around or drop off on the Almond side. Or if it's students, I mean, it would be great if they could just walk, because the turn restrictions is more traffic, more vehicles on Jardine that could just, not be there if they just walked. But if it's raining or they have a project materials they want to get dropped off, they still cannot make a turn. They have to turn right and find a place to turn around. The other change you'll see is that we really wanted to help drivers get themselves situated in this travel lane from the loading zone. So we extended the red curb pretty far, because at this location, there's a stop, there's a cycle, there could be bike lanes or bicyclists if they did not get, into the tennis courts. And so this extended hatch, red curb, no stopping, is to limit vehicles from moving into the spot and trying to take, just we're protecting this intersection with the reds here, no turns here, so the movement onto Jardine from Casita is less, and vehicles are loading and basically lining themselves, getting safely maneuvering and lining themselves on in this 10-foot lane to continue their travels. And this driveway is going to be better lined up with the crosswalk. The bicycle green striping will be better lined up on the school property. The school, I think, is planning on some improvements on this alleyway. But for this project, we just want to make sure that the bikes can actually get onto the ramp and it's not at the edge where the bicyclists are, moving into the crosswalk, because the ramp is not currently lined up very well, the driveway. So there's a driveway correction here. And in front of the house, that's right to the right of the driveway, east driveway, the 9-foot parking is there. We hope that by restricting left turns, parents are not, making this turn to park here for the kids to get dropped off and drive off. And the kids get dropped off, but they're using this as a loading zone. At this point, I don't have any red curbs recommended here because there isn't much of a visibility issue like we had at the other locations. So this is another stop. So this is why it's so red. And here the stop is right where it needs to be. So that's great. And so there's a couple parking spots available. They're public street parking spots. So we have about 3 past the east available. The loading zone is about 18 or so vehicles. And sorry, I'm moving this around kind of fast, but this section is basically the design of the east entrance improvements. Again, I'll just summarize the turn restrictions in the mornings and afternoon, no stopping anytime at all the corners, extended red by the stop that's there, and loading zone prior to the entrance so that there's a place for loading as well as parking. And past the east driveway, Casita to Alicia, this is pretty consistent to what we've shown before, just a little bit more signage, and that's about it. It just ends with Mountain View with Sharrows, and we also provided, and I mentioned Sharrows on the Valencia side to kind of connect, kind of show what happens to the bike lanes after this segment of Jardine is complete or done. So it's basically, it would just transition to Sharrows until we kind of work with Mountain View to kind of go over their ideas and what we should do. We have reached out to them to talk about Jardine Drive, so hopefully we'll get some feedback from them soon. This is a timeline. We've looked at it before. It's just almost the same thing, just a couple more meetings that have taken place. And with the goal of kind of showing, getting them something improved from what it is right now by August when the kids are back to school. However way this journey takes us, it would be great that by next school year we have a safer condition out there, if not sooner. That was all that I had so far. I'm sure there'll be some amazing questions. But thank you for your time and listening to this recommended this recommended plan for Jardine Drive.
Thank you, Dunia. Thank you for the presentation. Let's see, how many public comments do we have? Do you have any there? Any more there? Good. I know that a few others want to make a comment. Would you like to add yourself as well to the list to make a public comment? Sure. Yeah, okay. All right. I'll call you when you get a chance. I'm going to take a little bit slightly out of order. Usually we do the questions, clarifying questions. I'm going to do the public comments first, and then we can come back for questions and discussions. Yes. Yes. Okay, I'll give you 3 minutes each for making a public comment. Please state your name and, I'll start your clock for 3 minutes. I'll let you know when your time is up. Okay, first I have Michael Emmerich.
Hi, my name is Mike Emmerich and I live on Los Niños Way. And wrote a couple of notes here. My first observation with respect to the concept four is we're still attempting to include as many items as we can on Jarden with only 42 feet available in the new concept. It does not address the safety concerns. Currently, Jarden has 25 spaces and another 18 are being utilized for loading. What are the number of parking spaces and loading for the new concepts, including concept four? Nobody has addressed that. My recommendation in the beginning has to share lanes for the bikes and cars between Panchita, near the baseball field point of entry, and Casita, near the tennis courts point of entry. As long as the students on bikes use one of those points of entry, combining the bikes and vehicles should improve safety. On Thursday, I noticed the traffic study that we talked about. And what were the results of the traffic study, which I think you went over, but I'm not sure that when you included the pedestrians, you didn't include the people parking between Panchita and Valencia. And my wife and I did a count, and we had approximately 130 parking that was done on those streets. And they're parking everywhere. Today, I mentioned that the campus only has 62 student parking spaces. There needs to be an increase in the parking. Half of those aren't even being utilized. And I have gotten no answer as to why. And I haven't seen any data as to what they're going to do once the improvements are made on the constructions with respect to the construction sites and some other parking that's going to be available. We mentioned where the construction staging area is that could be utilized as staff parking, and they could have more students on the main parking lot. I'm curious as to how many violations we saw during this traffic study. I'm sure it was extensive. We've been talking about that for years. And how is the administration going to encourage students to park in the main parking lot? We said that the permits are only available at the first of the year. Well, we were told that they were available now. They're still not utilizing the parking there. They would rather park on our street than they would in the main parking lot. So the communication is off. As far as using the tennis sidewalk, I don't see how you could have the bikes going on that. There's not enough space. And unless they're going to redesign that, then it's not going to work. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Johnson?
I think it's pretty, my name is Peter Johnson. I live at 364 Fontainebleau Terrace. Option 4 looks like it's going to add another 30 plus cars to the north side streets. Panchita, Los Niños, Distal, Casita, Alicia, and perhaps over on Valencia and Fontainebleau Terrace where I live. What I've given you is a street map of the area. And the areas, the streets that are lined in yellow, and I realize nobody can see this. The areas that are lined in yellow in the accurate are the no parking from 10 to 2 or no parking at all that have been handed out by the city of Los Altos. And you'll notice on the plan that essentially everybody on the south side of the school has protected themselves from parking. And I know one person a couple of years ago that got signs put up on Valencia and on her street and all. And frankly, she was one of those that utilizes the squeaky wheel principle and was in front of the city council until they basically relented. But essentially, we've got, as previous speaker confirmed, 62 student spaces. We have 283 non-student spaces, everything from visitors, vans, staff with electric. And the city, under the old lining or the previous lining scheme, had given about 43 cars. So this option 4, maybe it's the best option, is going to throw another 30 cars onto those streets. So a couple of us, myself and another person here, are headed to the city council to make them aware of the fact that they have a very, very highly unequitable arrangement, which they've allowed. And our request may well be that we would like Distal and Los Niños and Panchita and Valencia to be granted the same privileges, if you will, that the streets on the south side of the school have been granted. It's just something that I haven't heard talked about, but it exists. And so everybody on that side is completely protected, and everybody on the north side is completely unprotected. A couple of things quickly, hopefully.
Time up.
Okay,
Yes.
I do have one question. As I'm going back to my seat, I will ask it. Why does a crosswalk need to be painted 12 feet wide when the entrances to it are only 6 feet? We can be a little more judicious with the paint that we're using.
Bill Bassett.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm on Distal. Let me just talk about number 4. Let's be reasonable. If somebody's gonna be on Casita coming up to the school to drop someone off and they cannot turn left, they're forced to turn right. So where are they gonna drop someone off? As soon as they make their right turn, they're in the traffic lane, and that's where they're gonna stop. Period. So you're gonna have cars stopping in the traffic lane to drop off kids because they can't turn left. If they can turn left from Casita, they're gonna go away from the congestion. What they do with their kids, that's up to them, but they're gonna go away from the congestion because all the congestion's to the right and they're forced to go to the right. That's the first thing. I agree with having signs so that the people on the north end can have the same protection as the people on the south end. Eventually, we should figure out, do an investigation as to how the heck we got to where we are. How come someone didn't realize the seriousness and the risk that's taken by what we have in the street right now? I was coming west on the lane on Jardin between Distal and Los Niños. A car coming east was hugging the center line. And that's because they have these parked cars and the doors can open in the lane. So all of a sudden I start hearing scratching on my car. That's because there's vegetation that's right up to the line of that lane. So I hear this vegetation. I hate to say I'm a good driver, but if I had not been a good driver, I would have moved left because I wouldn't know what that was and what danger, and the danger that could have been to me. I would have tried to move out of the way, I'd be hitting the car that's coming the other direction. Fortunately, I stayed where I was. My car got scratched. Next, I came east on Jordan and I parked. I had to go to the high school. Parked in a legal spot. And I looked at my rearview mirror, no cars. Opened my door, came out. I'm in the lane. I failed to realize that I had to get something out of the back door of my driver's side. So now I've got to shut my driver's door, go to the door behind the driver's door, and open that and get something out. Meanwhile, what happens? Cars coming. Fortunately, I was able to shut the door quickly and lean up against my car to avoid the car coming in. So this is serious stuff, folks. It's really serious stuff. And there should be really an investigation after all this is done, as to how we got here. It makes no sense. But I like to get us out of it. So number 4, I don't think we should be turning right from Casita at all. I don't think there should be a loading zone. We need the parking spots. And the people on the north side should be protected.
Thank you. David Saltra?
So, David Sauerhalf on Vista Drive. Look, I think what was proposed today is an improvement, but it's still got a number of problems. You're still trying to have everything. The parking, the bike lanes, the two-way traffic. And then I look at where the parking is, you have to cross the bike lane. And we're talking about drop off and pickup. It just makes no sense. With respect to the analysis, was there an analysis of the amount of traffic that actually traverses behind the tennis courts on bicycle? I think we know that the amount of traffic that traverses behind the tennis courts as bicycle traffic is very, very small, which is why it seems the obvious solution here is that it's a shared traffic and bike lane in the area behind the tennis courts. So call it Panchita down to Casita or whatever it is. I'm sorry, Panchita down to Alicia, perhaps. But it should be shared. So the parking in the neighborhood, that's an issue, and the inequity is wrong. It really needs to be corrected. It's not the role of the community to pick up for all the problems that may be there in the school. What also disappoints me is in the analysis that was done by the consultant and by the city administration, that talking with the school, I know that I, as a community member, tried to have a conversation with the city and wasn't provided that opportunity. Those of us in this room who are from the community are being ignored by the city administration and by the consultant. I feel like we're being gaslit. So those are the comments. It's pretty obvious. If you share the bike lane and together with the cars, you shift over, we can at least make this a little more manageable.
Thank you. John Wagner?
I'm John Wagner. I live at the corner of Jordan and Distel and have for 50 years. So I have seen what's gone on in the high school for a long time. I assume you all got the report prepared by some in the community on the traffic there. And I want to echo David and Bill's comments that there is no need or use of bike lanes on the present setup. I think there were 7 people that used it in the study that they did, and half of them didn't go to the high school. Removing that bike lane will add extra space that can be utilized. The buffer zone, the 2 car lanes are really narrow. 10 feet is narrow. When you get a larger truck, they're riding on the yellow line. I do sometimes too, because somebody's walking on the right. I applaud you for finally putting a buffer zone on the other side. That helps me. You know, I don't use my driveway anymore. It's too dangerous to back out because I block both lanes. From a personal standpoint, I'd ask you to put stop signs in both directions there so they stop when I try to back out, and instead of parking as I do now in the no parking zone. And that would help Bill's problem of opening the doors. There'll be more room and he won't be running into the bushes. I would also, let's see, I would applaud the improvements made there. The parking is a serious issue, and I don't know. You know, there is plenty of room. There's 3 tennis courts aren't used. That can be a parking lot. The road there can be used for student parking. I think there are ways to improve that dramatically. Finally, what was my third point? At this point, I'm blanking out. I wasn't smart enough to find the way these guys did. So I applaud the improvements, and I think the key is getting rid of the bike lanes. And as somebody said, let them share it as they always have for my 50 years there with the cars, and have the parking on the right. The more spaces, the better. And keep some shoulder on the other side of the road. Thank you much.
No, Keely?
So I live at the corner of Valencia and Jordan. So I think the first statement is part of your problem statement. You don't take homeowner interest into state. There's nothing in your problem statement that says you're going to take homeowner interest in the state, and I think that's a problem. So in part of that, you know, how many signage are you going to be adding to here? Your data already shows that no matter how much striping and how much signage, that you still have poor behavior. So I'd like to see how you're going to impact poor behavior. No matter how much signage, how much striping, I don't think that's going to impact the problem. Me personally, with my home that I don't think I've been listened to, the first iteration of this program, you've added 2 stop signs in front of my house. You have a crosswalk that goes straight to my mailbox. I've not seen any pedestrians using these 3 crosswalks, and now you want to put high, you know, yellow striping. So from my home, my bedroom, my front window, I'm going to see 3 yellow ladder striping, and I think that's not necessary. And I would really support that maybe you put yellow, you know, parallel lines, but putting striping there I think is unnecessary, and I'd like to see the data that show that there's sufficient pedestrian to warrant that. I've taken video, I've counted the number of pedestrians in a morning, I've seen 3. I've lived there for 15 years. I've had 2 children go to Almond, I've had 2 children go to Los Altos High School. I went to Los Altos High School. I've lived there for a long time, and I don't understand the issues that is requiring all of this going on. I don't know if there was any sort of traffic issues, any sort of accidents. I'd like to see the data that shows that there was actually accidents that you're actually improving on. Second of all, the data that you collected, I saw the polls go up. I think you collected data for a total of 2 days during the winter months. I don't think that's sufficient. And I don't think you had sufficient data to look at the new entrance at the baseball field, if that's going to be an option, but I'm hearing that that's not a long-term option. So my biggest point is I think that you need to be taking homeowner interest at the heart. It needs to be part of your problem statement. And I think the data that you collected was not sufficient to support it.
Thank you. I don't know the part here. Anybody else wants to make any comments? Yes. Come by, state your name.
Hi, I'm Lynn Emmerich. I'm also on Los Niños Way. I echo everything everybody's saying about the parking problems and all the feeder streets into Jardin. I've lived there on and off for 60 years. I've gone to Los Altos High. My children have never saw major problems at all. If no cameras were pointed down these streets, if you saw if cameras had gone down these streets, what you would have seen is the road is not wide enough for parking on both sides, plus traffic going on both sides, dropping kids off the middle of the street. They can't quite get to Jardin, so they just hop out in our driveway. Then kids are kind of maneuvering around the moving cars, or the cars, one car going one direction has to stop for another car coming their way. And we don't have a lot of bikes on our street, but we have a lot of pedestrians that have parked their cars way down the street. And as my husband said, we counted 130 cars on one day. I think it was the Thursday before winter break. And we counted basically from Valencia, but there were only like 3, through Alicia, and the majority were Panchita, Los Niños, Distal, and Casita, and they were crazy down the street. But the thing is like you think, okay, well, they're parking there, cool, except you've got the cars going in both directions and people being dropped off and walking in both directions. So it is not safe on our streets for the kids. And forget even pulling out of our driveway, so I totally sympathize there. But you have to consider the streets for safety, as well as, you know, we kind of want our neighborhood back because none of our workers can come to our house. You know, you have a housekeeper coming with their vacuum cleaner and they're 8 houses down, and that's not exaggerating, it's a thing. And that was never true before. And my thought is, I don't understand why we can't go back to at least some angular parking, because then you don't need the buffer zone for the doors opening, because they're not opening into a bike, they're not opening into driving traffic. I think that was safer as far as getting in and out of cars. So I'm wondering if you had the 2-way bike lanes that are sharing with the traffic, you have more road, you can put the angular parking in, you don't need the buffer, and that seems simpler and safer to me. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to make a comment? Yes. Yes, so please come by.
Hello, my name is David Williams. I live on the corner of Casita and Jardin. I took the data that I shared with you all. I've got to say that those cameras that we saw up there, they may well have taken data, but in the report, I didn't see one number. So you haven't actually analysed the data or presented it to us. So I don't know where these conclusions are coming from. So in my data, you have it in front of you. Bike lane, the bike traffic is quite low. It's actually quite a quiet street, apart from 15 minutes. And the worst time is drop off. All the cars come in, drop off their students, and they leave. They're driving quite slowly. And so it's not that dangerous. I mean, there's a lot of students, and I say it is a bit of a free-for-all, but the new stop sign there, coupled with the fact that everyone's having to stop to let their students out, means I don't think that it's really terribly dangerous. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think the school is being.
Why don't you come by?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
I said
Give me a minute to make a comment, to finish your thought from last time.
Yeah. I said I lived there for 50 years before they put up the present gate by the tennis courts, where it was wider. The bicyclists almost never came in there. Students did like mad, but it wasn't going to work with bicyclists. So they're thinking that that might change. No. The bicyclists are going to continue to come down Casita and go in that driveway, and they're not going to drive along Jordan to get there. They'll go around in the back streets where it's safer, and that's what's happening now. That's what used to happen. So the bike lanes allow for the diagonal. If they're gone, they'll maybe allow for the diagonal parking. That will help create less parking. And I might say San Francisco sells parking permits on the street. Los Altos might consider that also, and not for sale by the students. That would allow the neighborhood to be in the hands of the neighbors, not the high school or the students.
Thank you. That was exactly 1 minute, right? Any other comments? Okay. All right. Oh,
I represent the high school, so, and I know there's been some talk about parking and how much parking is available, and whether or not we'll pass giving it out. I did issue another, there's about 20 or 30 spots left in the main lot, that I see. And I issued about 30, spots, the week before the break. So I've been trying to do, and we're now releasing them to juniors. So some of the seniors are also now asking because we're not releasing the juniors. So we're trying to get more parking permits out. The second thing is that we're going to lose some of those parking spaces because the parking spaces along Valencia, the ones that are over by there, we're going to lose them because we're going to have to move traffic. We're going to have to move trash dumpsters back there because the construction is continuing in the cafeteria. And we have trash bins in the cafeteria that now have to be moved from there so they can do the construction, and they have to move them somewhere else. They're going to go into those spaces. So it's unfortunate. Unfortunately, until the construction is complete, it's going to be hard to have a lot of control over how many spaces we have at the high school. I'm going to survey the staff to see where exactly they're parking, so we can get a better count. So we can maybe if we can restripe some of those or remark some of the ones in the main lot, we can do some of that. But I'm trying to get a handle on this, and it's very difficult because things change. So,
thank you. Anything else? Anybody else?
I just want to say that we're not supposed to be the overflow when they have a parking problem.
Yeah. Okay, all right, I'm gonna bring it back to the commission. I'd like the staff to maybe come forward so we can have, if there are any questions and, easier to address them. Commissioners, I think the way I'm gonna do this is maybe we'll go around first for a round of clarifying questions for what was presented today first. And then we can come back for further discussions and comments after that, okay? All right, so, who wants to go first? Go first. Before you start, maybe it'd be useful to fill up the presentation just in case. Yeah. Yeah.
You can log in, now, if you'd like
You want to
to.
go ahead and talk to me one?
Yes. Sonia, thank you for your presentation earlier. To address one of the prior comments around data, you had shown a table there with that the cameras had taken data on, and ultimately it looked like there may be data included in those tables. Was that just minimized, or is there actually information that could be extracted and shared?
Yes, absolutely. We have data for all the 9 locations that we collected information for. And yes, the cameras did go up for 1 day in the morning and in the afternoon. And we got that PDF that I just kind of put as a sample, as well as an Excel file with an actual raw data. And in addition to the video that should match. In fact, we had traffic quality counts go back and do another look at it, because when we're watching some of the videos, I wanted to be sure if someone that was not on the crosswalk got counted or not, because it was a pedestrian moving. And so in fact, those numbers were double checked, triple checked. They did an automatic auto version staff, and then we had a supervisor go back to compare. So what I presented on my slide was just a deliverable sample and a picture of the camera itself. My intent on that single slide was not to cover 9 locations with the Excel spreadsheets and kind of dive into the data. The point was is that we did collect data and for the short period, and it was during an active school day, it was not raining, it was sunny, and so we tried to pick, even, you know, there's times that you want to avoid collecting data, and we tried to pick a date that was going to be within the acceptable range.
And follow-up question regarding the date range, is there a reason like cost or budget to only do 1 day versus like a week study for just a longer analysis?
Yes, it was definitely cost related. We wanted a lot more. I said, do it for the whole week, 24 hours. And so anyways, that was not, we were not able to. And then I just asked typically, and, you know, we explained what our use was going to be, you know, related to a street redesign. It's behind a school. We're expecting this type of pedestrian, bicyclist drop-offs. What do other cities do in a way? Like, how are we a day versus 5 days versus 10 days? And what we heard back, and they covered the whole nation, they said it's a day or 2 max. Typically, if you need more, more is better. I mean, they could do more. It's just the 1 to 2. And we were already at we could have only scheduled them on a Thursday. So we said, okay, Thursday it is. I'll work on the presentation until another question comes up.
Any other questions?
I guess another question, someone had mentioned kind of the idea of over-engineering with signs, which I also saw looking at like Google Street View back to 2011 and such, where it's quite simple, and I live on Marriage, so just a few streets away, and I get it, and it feels busier even where I live, and I don't deal with the pain of the current residents. Is there a reason so many extra signs and painting is needed to like still find the balance between safety and complete streets principles of like sharing the road with bicyclists, people, and cars?
Great question, and I think I kind of heard a piece of that from our residents too. Is you know, why is there so much signs out there? So we know with designing alone is not going to solve the problems we're seeing right now. Design is only one component of what we need as a community to make the changes. It does include support from the community. We need driver behavior to change, and we also need to give PD the ability to enforce and ticket. And so putting up enforceable signs helps the police department immediately ticket, which is a great you know, tool for them. They know where to go. We even asked the high school Vice Principal Derek, like, we know even PD is limited. What can we do in addition to what PD can do to kind of help with their enforcement, not with the ticket that's enforceable, but what can we do? And he said, well, we could put, you know, warning signs. Also, when I don't think he mentioned right now, but he's actually watching students that are making bad behavior. And so I think I have to ask again how he's tracking this, but students that basically illegally park or park down the neighborhoods, I believe he is going to use like don't do bad things or you won't get a permit that is yours to park on campus. So in addition to signing, the additional signage is to help PD. It's also to educate the driver that this is not for you to stop. It's designed for you not to stop, like the bulb outs, for example. So it seems extra, but I think right now we don't have it, and we're seeing what's basically happening is that even with that no parking pavement marker on the ground, people are still parking right over that hatched area. So it hasn't, like just putting the marking on the ground that says no parking, it's not stopping people from stopping. We hope with the signage, it'll help PD to enforce, and it's like reinforcing it with a red sign and don't stop.
And then I guess my last question will be, this project started before I think most of us were on the commission. So I don't have the understanding of like what the problem was and what the city at that time with Public Works was trying to solve. Do we have an understanding, or do you have an understanding of what that was initially? Because obviously someone's like, how did we get here? Which is a good question. And what was not working then at that time, which is what we were working to redesign.
Sure.
Yeah, and
we also have the same question because I transitioned to be the public works director in July 12th, and my team here, they're all new, and the installation of the existing condition was already in place. And unfortunately, the team that was part of those decisions and had the background is no longer here. So we also have the same questions.
Is there any reports or understanding of why that work was done from that? Because I remember seeing this in the town crier. It was listed there, and so yeah, there's no like logs or reports.
I couldn't find to put everything together on this.
What about the city manager doesn't know? I'm sorry.
We gotta wait for.
Thank you.
Okay. Not yet. If there's a specific question for you, would you like to add something to the discussion?
Well, you're asking what happened, right?
No, that's okay. I think we have the answer from the city. If there's something specific, the question, then you'll be happy to entertain an answer. Any questions? Tom or?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. It would be great, can AIM Engineering step back up for one more second?
She's right there.
Yes. Could you get the slide back up that shows the Casita section? And, that is blown up big enough so we can actually look at the road details, because I have a question about the bike lanes. So in a new design, which, and by the way, thank you for the new design. I think it is a significant improvement. In a new design, we have 2 one-way bike lanes, right?
Not sharing the screen properly. Sorry about that. I'm just trying to share it full screen.
I want to see the part that actually shows the drop-off loading zone.
Go fast to the drop off and loading zone, which is on the Casita side.
And is there a way that you can make that a little, there we go. So if you look at the loading zone, that's 9 feet wide, as I understand it. And then you've got the 5-foot bike lane, even though it's 6 feet, it looks like there's 5 feet that's operable, right? With bikes going from the left to the right, they're going, I guess, south. And so my question is, when a car pulls into that loading zone and it pulls along the curb, how much room is there between the left side of the car typically and where the bikes are traveling? Is it 2 feet? Is it 3 feet? What's that space?
Yes.
Typically.
Great question. In our previous design, we went with bare minimum, which was 7 feet. So right now with the extended 2 feet, it's now 2 more extra feet for the vehicle, basically door and getting themselves aligned to park near the curb. From the 9 foot, basically this black stripe right here, and the 5 feet that's designed for the cyclist to travel, it's basically where the cyclist feels comfortable. If they're using the middle of the 5 feet, it would be like in the 2.5 mark, right? So it'll be 9 plus another 2 feet.
So the reason I asked that question, I'm trying to visualize, so a car pulls over into the loading zone.
Yes.
And then let's say there are 2 kids in the back seat, and one of the kids decides to open a door, the back door, to get out of the car, but not on the curb side, right, on the driver's side. And of course the kids should be getting out on the other side, but they probably may not think about that. And so in your mind, there's 2 feet for that door to open, right, before it even touches the bike lane. Is that right? Okay, so that answers that question. So, thank you. My second question is, the no left turn action that we're taking on Casita, right, which stops somebody from coming up Casita and making a left turn. What is your expectation that will do to the cars trafficking up Casita today and making left turns? Do you think that they will make right turns, or do you think they will go to another street like Distal or Panchita and come up one of those streets to make a left turn there? And is that safer from your perspective?
Yes, it is safer for the vehicle to not make this left turn and instead go up the street, find a better place to stop near another crosswalk that's also controlled, and a crosswalk is provided, and for the pedestrian to safely exit, cross the street and get onto the school side. The impact of, I guess, the convenience for the driver off Casita to be able to drop their students somewhere in this area, basically is what we're talking about, right? We're saying, if we could even provide them the space, what's really happening? They're coming here, they're coming to a stop. They're looking right, left, there's a stop, so they'll wait their turn. They're basically, I mean, the car would have to really swerve right here and try to stop right here. And at this junction, what's happening is it's the most amount of traffic. And yes, I know someone mentioned all of this is for like 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon. Yes, but, and you know what, and that's what we need to design for is worst case scenario would be a vehicle trying to swerve in, and they're in this very busy driveway entrance, you know, kind of either stuck in a conflict zone or they're in conflict with one of the other users. And so your question was, what do you think will be safer? We definitely think if they don't make this turn to be in conflict with pets and bikes is much safer, for sure. Would they actually do it and practice? We hoped with enforcement, we could change that behavior. We also hope that by making this so attractive for students to just get out and walk and cross, if it's, you know, not raining or unsafe or however way the parents feel. For the most part, these are high school students, so that age matters. Actually, this recommendation I would keep even if it was a middle school or elementary school, to say that the high schoolers are older in age and their ability to cross the street alone is more possible than a child that needs a parent to park somewhere, hold their hand, cross the street with them. So yes, we do have the data, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to share the details of it tonight. It's just the presentation was to go over the design. However, the data does show that there are a lot of conflicts with vehicles and pedestrians in this exact turn during the window. It's not as early as 7, and I know we were talking about, can we make that 7:30 just to be like, let some early people that are going to work get out. But it's just that the sign would be a more of a custom sign than a standard California sign. So it's 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. This restriction would reduce how people behave. We hope PD could help us with enforcement, and we'll work with the school to send regular education components or flyers and such.
A follow-up question then, if they do turn right, I assume the cars coming up Casita are typically carrying high school kids in the morning that they're dropping off. Where do you expect them to be dropped off?
Sorry, if they're coming down Casita and now they can no longer make a turn. So it'd be to make a right turn, and so the next street would be either up Distal does not actually have a crosswalk, so it would be in Panchita, where we have the marked crosswalk and the upgraded ramp.
So you expect them to drive to Panchita and drop their kids off there if they haven't already dropped them off on Casita, is that right?
Sure, sorry, I missed that. So on Casita, we prefer the parents to stop on Casita, let the children out, and they walk across this as a first point. If they must make a turn to get into the loading zone, they would have to go, they could only turn right, and the safest place to drop them off is either near Panchita where they could cross. If they want to make the U-turn and come and drop them off here, then they have the loading zone just to get them across the street.
And if there are cars parked on Casita, is there room to drop kids off? I guess they would have to pull in where there isn't a car, right?
Right. So we can't, we are not designing up each of the minor streets or going over how parents are going to drop off their children. I think that, yeah, right. So someone mentioned that the street is so narrow. How are we fitting parents dropping off, the actual parking and the given travel lane, there's not enough room. There's not, so what someone mentioned, there's people waiting and swerving and watching someone coming towards them to accommodate them. All of that's true. In a narrow street, like all of these minor streets that we're seeing here, that is the given. In fact, we actually pulled up maps, and most of the property lines are within the city's right of way. So if we wanted to dig deep and kind of move lines, it would be, we would have to take property lines to where it really is. But I know we're not going there, so these lines are drawn on these drawings. These are not true property lines. The street, like a high school teacher, I believe, made a comment last time, the street is so much wider than what you guys are showing in the section. Yes, that's true. But in this exercise, we're not redrawing people's property lines and correcting and kind of taking away land to create a wider street with more accommodation. Given what we have, Casita drivers ideally would allow students to get to this first crosswalk, which is designed for them with this entrance. If they must drive, they have no choice but to find a place to safely make a U-turn, come back on the loading zone. And I think I have another staff member.
Say, based on the data that we saw.
Okay, can you get pick up the voice?
Yeah, can you? So, I think we can safely say that based on the data we got, most students are being dropped off on Casita. So the cars, when they're making a left turn, they're basically leaving, going back home. You know, there's so many students just crossing this Jordan here at Casita. So I think if we make people go right, they might have to kind of go around and go home. So making a left turn is really, anyone making a right turn is not gonna drop a student off there. Very few people.
Thank you. Other questions?
No. Not right now.
So, a couple of questions on the cross section that you had up there. So you've got on the left side you have a 6 foot, and then you've got the 9 foot, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so when you download the PDFs that's on the website today for today's meeting, those are 5 foot and 10 foot. So there's a difference there that should be corrected from one another, because it doesn't match your presentation.
Right. We made that change after the uploaded version, when we noticed that the 5 foot in the buffer, the shoulder on the north side needed that extra foot. So we thought 10 foot of a parking lane was, oh, sure.
Saying that there's a difference.
There's a discrepancy, yes.
The information is not on the website. So there's no way for us to tell which is, excuse me, the correct one.
Okay.
I mean, what's on the website, I would assume is correct, but it's not.
You're right. No, that was correct. As of then, when we uploaded, that was the plan, was a 10 foot parking lane and a 5 foot bike lane on the north side. Yes.
So that'll be there.
Yes.
Excuse me. So on the, this quality accounts company, you said you put up 9 cameras. Are those gonna stay there permanently, or for how much longer?
It was only for a couple of days and it's already been,
It's all recorded. I'm saying how long are the cameras gonna be up?
no, they're already removed. They were removed last Friday.
It doesn't sound like a lot of people agree that that's not a very good data set.
So it's a sample, yes, it's one sample, and we needed something to just, the inspections that we've done in the field, has been throughout different hours of the day. We didn't have an independent third-party company that's their sole job of setting up, capturing the data, and,
I assume it's a software, they have software counts in their camera, looking at the camera, and their software pulls up what the counts are.
yes, exactly. So I mentioned earlier that we did it 3 times. So the software values that we received, then we reviewed it with them, and then we had them redo it again to watch the video and make sure every data point is actually.
But I didn't hear anything about software. So, Um, so it seems like it's just not a very big data set, and I realize it's a cost issue, but, you know, on other days, like, when it's raining and things, it's definitely gonna change things, but, so I guess it's a baseline to start with. Okay, the other thing where you've got the signage, you're changing you're putting up the standard sign that says 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon. And then the loading zone you have there where it says no stopping anytime.
For the loading zone, no part, I think it was, the parking, yeah, passenger loading only.
So we have a no stopping anytime. To me, that implies that that's also on the weekend, and you're gonna have not have people there going to school so much during the weekend, but people are gonna be using those, I'd say, those spots for tennis or whatever else. So I would think that those signs should actually say weekdays.
So to your point, yes, so I first wanted to point out, in case anyone was confused about these arrows on the no stopping anytime. This is a standard sign, but when we order these, are typically at the time of ordering a sign, you designate, make the arrow go right or left. So that'll, right, between, for example, this red would have one arrow pointing one direction, but then, right, you're talking about the next point. I just wanted to mention that, so that no one thinks that we're saying no parking, where we're also saying it's a loading zone. So here we said school days, and you would like that to say weekdays instead of school days?
No, I'm just saying that when you say no stopping anytime, that implies that it's also enforceable on the weekends.
Right, that is correct. So where we have no parking anytime, we do want it to be 24 hours.
Even on weekends.
Even on weekend. The reason why, well, this location, yeah, this location has to do with operations of cars leaving the parking and lining up to this travel lane.
You're not gonna be using that. Kids are not gonna be going to school.
Right, it'll be parking, but there will still be bike lanes that there may be cyclists.
Tom, I think it's that red, that's where the no stopping is.
Right.
It's not the other.
But typically that's where people park anyway, right?
No, the parking will be.
During the weekend for tennis courts.
Right.
People, I think, will park there.
Right, so this recommended concept does include red zones, and it's mostly to make sure the stop sign is visible. And so we have this red zone near this very busy intersection, Casita and Jardine. The other time you see this red is for this stop here. And we have seen cars completely block the stop, and we have videos of people running through the stop.
Sure, I understand that.
So this would be around the clock, yeah.
I think one of the big priorities should be is looking to improve as much parking as you can.
Sure.
And weekend is different than weekdays. And then the other priority should be looking to increase student parking.
Now, can we wait for comments till later? Maybe we'll go to the questions so we can come back for comments.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
I've got a couple if I can.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks, Tony. I really appreciate everything. Okay. Try to keep it to just a couple quick questions. When I see the improvements, or the updates that you guys made to the proposal, it looks like many of them came from, obviously hearing community input. It appears to me that some also came from the observation and the data collection that you guys saw and processed, right? Is that fair to say that some of what we see here today that's different from when we last saw things is in response to or because of the observations that you've seen from the data that has been collected since then? Is that
Yeah,
right?
and great question, because I did want to mention, I was saddened when I heard that the community members said they felt like they were not being heard, or that they were not being included, or their thoughts and emails are not being reviewed by us. Actually, this project has stopped a lot of other activities in the city. We are reading, reviewing, talking, sharing, tabulating every comment that has come from who the person is, where are they living, how is this affecting them. And so absolutely, each meeting that we've had up to now, we've been kind of adding to the comments and feedback, which is why we didn't want to go and present 3 more concepts and keep this going. It's kind of like it's time. The first 3 concepts were, in my opinion, were pretty different in a little bit. One was completely removing parking. One was an idea of a separated north path. We as a city needed to be okay to create that physical barrier, which would have been a kind of not only costly, but that's the way to call it cycle, class 1 cycle or shared space. So that was not another idea, but not a good one, or one that we could implement quickly and within the means. And the third one was almost like taking it back to what it was. So this concept plan, this recommended one, or concept 4 that we called it earlier, is a modification to what was almost there with what we've heard from the community. And I know I recently just heard angled parking and with that, so that was not presented, and we don't really want to, I guess, I don't want to use the word confuse. It's this commission and us as staff, we want to build a city that kind of matched the first slide that I had, which was a very interconnected city where pedestrians, cyclists, students of different ages could get to school and around town confidently, where the facilities there, whether it's a crosswalk, a bicycle lane, ideally sidewalk as we get there. And just removing a bicycle lane to say this was better in the past doesn't really line up to the future vision of the city as a more interconnected in small baby steps. It's not like we could just, like we see right now, install a design that doesn't really fit the neighborhood. We need to move in the right direction with small improvements with each pavement project. And if we have some basic standards like if whether it's edge lines are, so far, or bike lanes are pretty much consistently 5 feet throughout Los Altos, and our crosswalks are due to safe routes to school or high visibility. Even signage, we have a lot of faded signage, like actual stop signs that are faded around town. So there is a need to make the city safer, and I think I heard that earlier, is like we need to be safe all around, not just in this one little pocket. So to get there, we have to, we do have to move towards a multimodal, improvements or designs and concept plans. We cannot eliminate bikes because they're not appearing to be counted by the residents today. We just cannot. We know there's a high school, and as the students, I know they're not here tonight, they were vocal bicyclists. They wanted to use their bikes to get to school. They want that freedom to travel that way. And we would like to provide that at the expense of maybe moving some, cars out of the way, yet providing some parking and having loading during the school hours. To answer your question, yes, this latest concept plan definitely took account the various methods of collecting feedback from the community, these meetings, emails, phone calls, site visits. We've had site visits with the community members, meetings with the high school as well. Taking into account the safe routes to school plans, which are council's highest priority, as well as the complete streets master plan, and just kind of like, what does the network look like? In addition to literally our pockets, like what can we really afford this year? What can we do that's add safety at more sites more consistently, and the improvements on just one corridor could be achieved kind of efficiently to the best of our abilities to make it safer than it is right now. Yet, as time goes and the needs change, the demand, I think someone mentioned, is the tennis court even going to get used? It hasn't been used in the past. Well, we hope that if we open it up, we have the proper signage, we have staff, and we have, and things to encourage the students to get through that way. Well, the length of, behind the baseball fields and tennis courts where they're going to be in conflict, basically, sorry, not baseball, tennis courts would be reduced. So we hope to change behavior. We hope to have a more active community. And I think Los Altos altogether with it's a very active community. My observation so far, there's people on the ground at whatever facilities are available. You guys already have an active community, so it'd be great to, and I heard birds chirping, so it would be great to have that community where people are still walking, they're hearing the birds, communicating with their neighbors, saying hello, and their cleaners have an ability to park in front of their house. Like that's should be an environment that we want to provide. These side streets next to a high school but is naturally going to get some impact. The high school leadership is very well aware. They have not missed a single meeting that we've asked them. Even on days off, they've taken calls from us. And so we are pretty, I think, fortunate to have a very interactive high school that's willing to make changes to their property with their funds to improve the design. So we're kind of lining up. We're also trying to work with our neighboring cities to say, hey, what are you guys doing? When are you guys going to do Jardine? This is what we're thinking. Would you carry this when it's your time for your pavement rehab? So by today's meeting, which is great that we needed more time to get to this point, we feel like we've done more digging in, more research, more communications, more meetings, and we also would like to make it safer. I'm sure there's even a better design out there than this. It's just, it's really unsafe right now. And the more we fine tune, and we're missing other school opportunities. There's other safe routes to school principals that have reached out to us, and they're like, when are we gonna get you guys to come to look at our school? And we hope to make Jardine safe. And there's go on to other schools that they also have issues that we need to get to.
Thank you for all that. Appreciate that. I have a couple more quick questions if I can. We'll try to be pretty focused. You know, you mentioned safety, and one of the things that I appreciate about this updated proposal and the data collection that you did is that I think it really highlights, and you highlighted in your remarks, some of the specific safety issues, serious safety issues on the street. And that's helpful for me in trying to really drill down on where are the areas of the biggest concern where the city should act, you know, before we have, you know, a serious injury or accident or fatality, God forbid, right? So, you know, you mentioned Casita and Jardine, that intersection specifically, and you saw some near misses. And I'm interested, is that, if you could talk a little bit more about what specifically you see there. And clearly, you know, you talked about driver and pedestrian, you know, near impacts. Are you looking at pedestrians that are crossing east-west and folks that are drivers going, you know, southbound on Casita? And that's part of the reason why we're looking at taking away the left turn there. Is it also folks that are making a left turn and are hitting folks crossing the street from north to south? Could you tell me a little bit more about your sense of that?
Yes, during that window, the 15-minute window, the peak 15-minute in the morning and the afternoon, there is a mix of all uses. So there's bicyclists, pedestrians, and vehicles, and they're all trying to figure out what to do right here. So students are trying to get through, cyclists are kind of weaving around. They're not staying actually even within the bike lanes or just the green box, but their goal is, you know, they're looking at the driveway and they know where they're trying to get in here. And one thing that I did notice was even a vehicle driving onto the campus in one of our videos. So we did check with the high school and I said, why did a car just follow a pedestrian, a student into the school? And the school was very surprised because they've warned the contractors to not enter this driveway when school's in session. They're supposed to arrive before school or when classes are in session. So there's going to be some enforcement, hopefully from the school to the contractors. So there was even vehicles cutting right through, so they're like inches away from the other, you know, students. So what we're seeing is clusters of students. They're kind of packing the corners, all sides, and they're just zigzagging through. When there's a car at a stop, the kids are just walking. If there's a bicyclist, they're just figuring out what to do. And a car is kind of, when they're brave enough, they're scooching out of the stop, and they are sometimes blocking the intersection, and they're waiting, or they're getting close to right here. Bike moves, they wait. If there's a pedestrian, they wait a little bit longer, and eventually they're just like, oh, can I just get out of here? So they just kind of avoid and kind of pass this intersection right here. I wanted to make a statement about my personal experience. I mentioned it earlier. So my experience in working with other agencies has been that during my time working for those agencies, two of the cities that I work for in the Bay Area basically became Vision Zero cities. And Vision Zero is a policy of zero fatalities on city streets, whether it's a car, bike, pedestrian, motorist of any kind. And seeing a city transition from prior to Vision Zero to becoming a Vision Zero, it's all about safety in the road. So designs are really looked at carefully for all modes, and we basically do not just look at that only a pedestrian could, have a collision and have an injury. It could be a bicyclist, it could be even a motorist. So, and we really looked at data at all those tiers, is it severe, minor, or, moderate injuries and what happened. And in my experience, we basically go out to the field with the police department. We look at the reports. Typically, they have the police report from the incident, and staff, we don't really need the personal information, but we do want to know what happened, what direction were they coming, where was the sun, where was the tree, what were they looking at, how did this happen? There's times where a design improvement could have been made. I mean, that's the worst case, right? It's like, oh my God, this could have been prevented. Then there's cases where the street is designed to the best. It was bright, it was striped, it was marked, and there was some other error, and we need to know that too. In addition to the two agencies that we moved to Vision Zero, which is a very huge policy at all levels in education, enforcement, and design altogether. I also work for an agency that had about 17 children involved collisions, and it happened, around October, so between August to October. And in that agency, it was very heartbreaking. I mean, we're looking at the eyes of the parents who had a child that was impacted in some way. And we went to all those 17 locations, the same drill, like what happened, who, where was the student, where was the car, where was the bicyclist coming? And it was a life-changing experience for me myself, because I thought as an engineer working for an agency, our goal is to make the city streets safe. And we want the young kids, and in that case, there were elementary kids as well in the 17 cases that I was mentioning. And it basically came down that we need the community support. If we keep, it's not one way or the other. We need each other's help to change our behavior. The driving behavior is something no engineer could really fix per se without putting a bunch of restrictions and bollards and things that we're not considering, at least in this design. But I guess that's my history, is that Vision Zero is like it's a policy a lot of cities are adopting to make it safe for city streets. It goes without saying, it shouldn't even be a policy, it's just by nature. Then you have cases where the thing that you're trying to prevent has happened, and staff, PD, community were going to those locations and trying to figure out after the fact. So when I was brought onto this assignment, it just kind of like rang all those bells in the background, and it's like, oh, this is not going to be a quick one wide brush. This will take care of it. Because every location, and I appreciate the community being here, every location has its own dynamics. Who's living there? How many have high school students? Which of their friends live up the street? How many of them like walking? Which of the kids are want to drive their friends to so they're student drivers, not even parent drivers. And so there's a lot of pieces to this story, and while we're presenting something, I don't want the community to think that A, they were not heard, or B, that we're trying to rush through this, or C, we don't know what we're doing, and D, whatever was the previous experience is going to be another kind of rush delivery. We want to continue listening. We had this meeting. You guys have the ability to make a decision if you think this is safe enough to make it, move forward and hopefully make it safer than what it is today. If you would like additional information or more revision, what this is taking is the time for us to address additional streets that are waiting on the Safe Routes to School path.
So I have no questions. Okay. I had a quick, my questions were asked by the commissioners. I had a couple of quick questions. On the parking, we had 8 feet in the original designs, and you're proposing a 9 feet. There are some concerns about maybe some vehicles may not be accommodated at 8 feet. How do you feel about the 9 feet, and what does your diligence say about that?
Sure. So the original design actually had 7 feet. We're being very aggressive because we wanted buffer on north and south, but we don't have the room. So we thought, let's make it 10, which was more than enough room. And that's the plan that got uploaded to the website. As we spoke to the school, we had more discussions, we got more videos and revision of the data collected. It was apparent that from 7 to 9, which is still the additional 2 feet and cars are parking up to the curb, we believe it's safer than the 7 feet. There's enough room for the door swing, and the bike lane is still 5 feet with their additional 2 feet buffer. That extra foot, if we could throw it on the north side, making that 5 foot north side bike lane a 6 foot bike lane, I believe that's the better use of that extra foot.
And on the, I see that there is on the bike lane striping, there is, so on the south side.
Sure.
So there is the 5 feet, and then I see those hash marks to provide some sort of a buffer, I guess.
Yeah,
And that's how wide is that?
it's a 2 foot right here. So in fact, the bike lane is kind of like a 7 foot space for them, 5 and 2. And the buffer, the tick marks is basically to indicate that a vehicle that's parked may lead, it's indicating for the bicyclist that a parked car may come in front of them versus a solid hatch.
I want to give you an opportunity to maybe address some of the concerns about, the yellow striping. Specifically high visibility striping.
Sure.
And why that's the case.
Yes, so the high visibility striping on all of our Safe Routes to School have been established by the Safe Routes to School plans. So the city has had all the schools in Los Altos evaluated for Safe Routes to School. Where there's a crosswalk recommended, it's always a yellow high visibility crosswalk. And so for starters, we basically compared what was the recommendation and what do we have now. Every recommendation matched, except we got one corner where it did not match the proposed plan from even before, which is not the team before, it's the planners. I think Alto planners did the citywide Safe Routes to School evaluation. We have gone to other locations around the city and they're upset that they don't have a yellow ladder crosswalk. They're actually demanding for a crosswalk to be painted yellow. It's not on our, among priorities, we're trying to figure out which school to work on next. So residents near schools feel safer if there's a crosswalk that is marked yellow for safety and for the drivers to know that there may be young, or students, basically yellows symbolizing the student use of the corridors or the crosswalks. And so the yellow high visibility crosswalk is pretty much a standard for a Safe Routes to School and paths, which is why this last one I know was previously there. It somehow got missed in the striping of the last project. And we are bringing it back because it is a corner point to the Los Altos block.
And what's the recommendation on the width of those crosswalks?
So the standard is 12 inches. I know someone said 12 feet, so crosswalks typically line up to a ramp. And unfortunately, we don't actually have ramps as, like in this Valencia location. So it would be, a minimum sidewalk is 5 feet. That's like the standard. So 5 feet would be sufficient because it lands to the opening of a ramp that's not there right now, but so that's what the plan is. So if these are longer than 12 feet, if that's what the question was, but the width of it there is a minimum width. The striping width is a foot each, 12 inches with a 12-inch.
The width of the whole crosswalk.
Yeah, the width of the crosswalk can be, it's actually up to our discretion. Minimum would be if there were a ramp as it should be, right? Crosswalk goes to another crosswalk. It would line to the width of the ramp.
Thank you. All right, the question on the data that was collected, there was a bunch of questions saying that maybe the data was insufficient. From your experience, what can you say about data collected on a single day versus multiple days? And how typical was the day that you think the data was collected on that represents maybe a larger set?
A great question. I think more data is always better. And I think even with more data, it would lead to averages. So it would be like, okay, we collected 5 days, an average, this is what's happening here, here, here. The activities that we saw, which were movements that even if there was a crosswalk, people were just like going at an angle. They're not actually getting caught by the data collector, so we had them redo it. More data would just give us more pinpoints. I think it would, of course, be a little bit better. The data we did collect actually gave, from when we evaluated and we went through it with the quality counts, like supervisor, I guess. And the data was very like standard for our schools, drop-offs and peak hours. So the peak 15-minute, they said, yep, this pretty much matches what we saw. Peak hour was like, yep, pretty much standard across the country. This window, everyone shows up because they're dropping off their kids and they go away. And then everyone comes back in the afternoon to pick up. We wanted to know of these side streets, which one is getting the most, use or drop-offs or pickups, because we wanted to make sure that if we're proposing around, I mean, this crosswalk is already here, but we wanted to make sure that this gets utilized because it's set up so pretty. Like we have the 3 stops, they have a crosswalk, we have a bike lane, and the access to the baseball field is right here. And school said that they'll keep it open. So I was interested in what's happening here. It goes without question. We've already seen what was happening at Casita. It just, the numbers showed it. I didn't see so many near hit misses because all of us go wearing our yellow vest and they know someone's out there, and even drivers behave different, but when the cameras are up, they're doing them. They're doing whatever was natural and they would do every other day. And that was interesting, is to see when staff was not on site, how people were driving.
Was that the main recommendation that came out of the data, was that left turn, restricting the left turn?
The data, this left turn was due to the amount of near hit misses at this location compared to any other location. And then we saw a lot of illegal U-turns and parents just dropping in the middle of the lane, which is
U-turns where again?
just throughout. So they'll just go and try to make a U-turn. And also there's no shoulder right now. So parents were actually stopping, or drivers on the travel lane, blocking cars till their child got out. And then they're figuring out where to even go because it's in the middle of the street. So it was a lot of.
You're trying to get a sense for how critical that left turn is for the design.
The left turn is highly recommended. I think it would really improve any conflict to this point. And if we could, all the streets would even be even safer, but that wouldn't be fair. This location, we also saw a lot of people on foot. So we know people are dropping in, like Haroon just pointed out, people are dropping off a little bit ahead, and then they're trickling in. So the inconvenience would be for the parent or person that cannot make a left, but they'll have to find another way to get to the freeway if they're going to work.
Is the, in terms of just congestion in that corner, do you expect any significant shift in traffic, just the traffic pattern and even just a drop, since you're expecting the drop off happens all the way on Casita? And I think I heard that most of the drop off happens there anyways. It seems like maybe helping congestion, or do you think that's going to possibly cause traffic some of the other side streets?
We know that Casita and Panchita are the two, if I could go back to the main slide, we know that those kind of funnel in, those are the two preferred paths to Los Altos High School from even El Camino Real. Whether it is Casita or Panchita, those are the preferred routes. Panchita, the volumes were much lower than Casita. So to answer your question, if people are coming down Casita and now they can no longer make a left turn, they will, they have Panchita to kind of in a way exit back out of. So it's like making a U-turn.
Okay. Do you think that there's a possibility that having a crossing guard in that area might alleviate the problem, or will have the same effect as maybe not having a left turn there?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. If we had help during these 2 hours consistently, for the most part, they try not to run over the crossing guards and they're very, I mean, they take their job so seriously and it's so sweet. And they are protecting the kids and when they're there, vehicles respect the crossing guards. So yes, to answer your question, if we had a crossing guard, the turn restrictions could be an option that we remove. It's just, there is no guarantee there, and we wanted something to help with, again, back to enforcement and changing behavior.
It works pretty effectively on the almond side.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and I have just one last question. I just want a clarification on, there was a comment that you made about bike ingress and egress, managing the ingress and egress of bikes or even pedestrians into the school, either on the tennis court side and then back out on the other side. Can you clarify what you were saying and get what was the intention there?
Yes, great point. And I think my other slide, that showed the whole corridor not broken up like this, it might be a better one to show. Actually, that's kind of even smaller. What I was mentioning was, if we, and I think that the school is supportive of this, is that if we got help funneling students, both on foot and bikes through this with an improved, tennis court gate, so it's better, wider, not as big as the east entrance, but it's like a proper entrance into the high school. Technically, the bikes over here during school arrival and departure, arrival would be a lot less, right? So if they're getting caught upstream and someone is, let's just say a crossing guard is standing right here, a school principal is standing here making the bicyclists in the morning get onto campus here. Well, if they're getting here, they shouldn't disrespect a grown up and continue. They're pretty much entering on the tennis court.
Directly, okay.
So then this path is kind of empty. Let's just assume it's a little bit less, which is why making this a loading zone would be with the least amount of bike conflicts, technically, or assuming they got caught upstream by the faculty pushing them onto campus. So although the bike lane is here because after school hours, others are riding other cyclists exist. Making this the loading zone would be a little bit safer because they're not really in conflict with the bikes, assuming they got on campus already. So that's when they're entering and coming to school, they're getting caught right here. Well, then the reverse happens is we wanted to see if we could work with the school where when it's time to leave, departures, they leave off out of the Casita main entrance. The reason why is that here we have a crosswalk, three-way stop, and the bike facility stripe. If they left this direction, if they left off the tennis courts, well then what's happening is they could only go in one direction and there's a loading zone for the afternoon. So now we are introducing conflict with bikes and cars. And so our plan was to hopefully kind of get them into the tennis courts in the morning and out through the main entrance in the afternoon. So at least the kids, the high school students are kind of operating in that way and safer. Otherwise, the rest of the day, it's just your typical bike lane.
Right.
Did that answer the
Yes.
question? Okay.
I think that's all the questions I had. I just wanted to see if maybe give the opportunity for the vice principal, see if he wants to make any comment. School. I know that he wanted to make a comment earlier about things, but I think with respect to this one, and there was a question about the gates, managing the gates. So if he wants to make a comment.
What we would do with the gates is we try to actually do kind of similar to what we did with Almond and try to move the bike and pedestrian traffic away from the loading and unloading zone so that we don't have conflicts of cars with bikes in that area and make it safer. So that's kind of the main thing for that.
Is a proposal then to maybe shut off the gate at the during
After school? I don't know, we haven't thought about that, but yeah, we could, and then make them, I'm thinking about allowing the students to kind of bike through there and then bike over to the east driveway, because there's an east-west access on the other side of the field, that's fairly wide. that would allow bikes to traverse that way, and it would make it more popular coming in, going through there. And then if they're on the east driveway, right, if bikes are parked on the east driveway, they'll go out to Casitas. They'll just naturally go out to Casitas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. I have one question for staff, just as a follow-up, there's just a bunch of different things proposed as, you know, a new, in terms of even the logistics, like, you know, the left turn in the loading zone. What is the plan to monitor this? Is there a plan to monitor this over time and come back with maybe additional data to see how things are going and what improvements have worked and what might have not, and what additional tweaks can be done? I mean, is there a plan to monitor this?
Absolutely. I think that's only the right thing to do. We hope to get more enforcement, and we've had PD be such a great supporter. So the turn restrictions, the red curbs allows PD to take it or be at least present more. We hope that changes behavior. The loading zone is where I think the disrespect might happen, where it says loading and someone really needed to park and there they are. So we have to be reasonable with the resources the police department has, like how many people are actually on patrol and traffic unit, and compared to the rest of their priorities. So as staff, we of course want to follow up with the design and see. And I think that this site will not go unnoticed between the high school being very involved. I love your suggestion of a crossing guard at Casita, and just the students, the community. I think we'll continue the conversation. And just like last year's plan is just about to get wiped and we're going to look at it again, if a problem exists, we have no choice but to address it. And right now we have a problem and we're trying to address it. We do want to continue monitoring traffic counts, education with the school. And I know I mentioned Vision Zero, but we did talk to the high school about how can we educate, the behavior also has to change. How do we message this? How can you give incentives to the students for good behavior? You know, and so the vice principal had some great ideas of surveying the faculty to see where the faculty is. Students that are not doing preferred behavior, kind of keeping them on track, in addition to additional parking. So we are open to continuing evaluation, more data, revisiting, and it would be great to do it in a citywide approach so that other schools are really frustrated a little bit that they have safety needs that we're not getting to. So it'd be great to say, and I think the plan was, should we have a budget for traffic counts? On regular basis, should we be sprinkling traffic counts? And that's like, yeah, I think we had it and it went away, and I think we want to bring it back. That would be one. So we're brainstorming on how we could not just show favoritism to one location, but kind of consistently.
Thank you. Any other questions? I just want to bring it back.
I just have a follow-up to a question.
Sure, go.
A question that you asked that I didn't hear the answer to. The question was, what were the conditions the day that you collected the data? Was it raining? Was it clear? Do you know? Do you remember?
Yes, I do know. So we had the forecast earlier in the week had rained, and Thursday was completely dry, sunny, crisp, clear. And so actually all the videos show there's not a drop of rain. And that's important. If it had rained, we were going to change the data and we were going to still have tonight's meeting, but we would just say we were not able to capture data.
Thank you.
I had just, yeah, one quick one, and I'm not sure how you can just, you know, we talked about traffic counts, maybe having a budget for that, or, you know, other measures to understand better or with more rigor, like what's going on at these intersections. Like, and I know neither Ida nor you were around for the previous version of this, but like, is it possible in your view that we might be in a better place today if we had incorporated some more of that rigor or data, you know, into the sort of, you know, original street design or the original improvement that was made to the street? guess that's speculative.
Sure, yeah, no, that's a great question, and I think the question came up earlier about how do we get here. So on the city's website and in the Complete Street Master Plan, this segment has been identified previously an adopted document to be a cycle track, which pretty much means a protected bike lane, a bike facility. And so the current design, as uncomfortable as it is, technically meets what that master plan kind of outlined high level. I think where the missed opportunity was this interaction and kind of walking the design step by step, segment by segment to kind of get this engagement. And so I don't know if I answered your question. Okay, you're welcome. Just stay here in case another one comes up.
Before you, what are you asking for the commission today to maybe do as part of our discussions? And then we can come back to discussions and some final comments. Yeah.
Yeah, Aida will give that.
So as I mentioned at the beginning, if the CSC feels comfortable with this proposed design, then, we were looking for a recommendation to staff from the CSC. If you still want to form an ad hoc because you feel like you're not supporting or recommending this recommended design, then you have that option because it's in the agenda and it had to be agendized, for you to vote on that. So that's up to you. You have your discussion and then you'll come to your conclusion whether we move forward with a design and some tweaks, or you need to form an ad hoc subcommittee, and there's a process outlined in the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Very good. So I'll come back, bring it back to discussions and comments, so you can either, provide some comments, additional comments on the design. And then if there are some recommendations that you would like to see, we can discuss those as well. And if we feel that we're ready to make a recommendation, that's part of your discussions as well. So, I'll open it up for comments and discussions. So if you want to make a general comment, that's fine too. So.
Well, I'll make some comments. First of all, I want to thank staff and I want to thank everybody in this room who's here tonight, and who was also probably here at the last meeting, because the amount of time and energy that's gone into this has been significant. And so this is not a simple problem. I mean, this is really complex. And I was here when we were working on the Almond Avenue challenges. And what's very clear is what affects one part of the school then ripples across and affects all the other parts as well. So what happens on Jardine will affect what happens on Almond, vice versa. And as the school changes and grows, that will also make changes. So this is not a small thing, right? And it is, I think the consultant organization has actually done a really good job in listening and trying to address as much as they could possibly address in a solution. And I want to talk about a couple high level things that I've been thinking about during the process. One is that it's going to take a combination of the design, implementation, and education and enforcement. No one of those three things is sufficient. And I think the school is going to have to take on the education with the help of the city, because a lot has already happened in terms of educational tools that are available. But I think the school is going to have to step up to that. And I also believe that the school can also help with enforcement, certainly during a transition phase, because the police department on their own can't do it on their own. They don't have enough staff to do it on their own. So other people are going to have to be out there helping, who know what has to happen and can help direct the right activities. I also want to talk a little bit about the parking issues, because they are pervasive way beyond Jardine. And I know a lot of people who live on those feeder streets, on Distal, on Panchita, on Casita, on all the other streets that are close to the school are dealing with that, and there has not been a consistent approach to how that's deal with that among the streets, and that's been loud and clear for everybody here. This commission on its own doesn't have the scope, and Sheriff, if you want to confirm that, we don't have the scope to deal with all of those parking issues. And the staff that's here, the transportation staff, doesn't have the scope themselves to deal with it on their own. It goes beyond just one department and one commission. And I think one follow-up that could come out of this would be for staff to then bring that up to management to say, how do we get all the component parts together to really take a look at, can that be addressed in a consistent way? So that's, but that won't happen as part of this process that's going on right now. And then a couple of things specific to the plan there. I actually like the no left turn action that the council's taking, because I think that actually does make it safer. I like the simplification that has happened to the plan. I thought the two-way bike lane was actually added too many moving parts where there was additional risk. I personally have experience with inconsistent crosswalk striping on one of the streets in Los Altos, where there are two crosswalks within 4 blocks of one another, and they're both visible to one another. One has the striping that's horizontal across, the other is just 2 solid lines. If I go to the crosswalk with 2 solid lines, cars violate that crosswalk all the time. The ones with the horizontal striping, the cars stop at. I don't know, it just makes a difference. So that makes sense to me. And I felt better about seeing the parking, I'll call it a buffer, although it's not a buffer, the additional space on the left-hand side of the parking that allows cyclists to clear people that do open their car doors. And the one reason why I like the no left-hand turn out of Casita is because forcing cars to turn right and not drop off people in that intersection, I think really is a huge gain safety-wise. And if that causes the driver of the car to drop the kids off several blocks away, terrific, right? Because not everybody can be dropped off in that small drop-off zone. That isn't going to happen. And my other thought is that over time, and that's why I would agree with whoever made the comment about having to monitor the implementation once it's been executed, because, you know, it's not hard to then put up other no left-hand turn signs if that really would make a difference. So that's an easy fix. That's not either expensive nor obtrusive. So, and then the last thing I would say is that the city council did us all a really big favor when they basically made a decision to say, we are prioritizing safe routes to school, and we are prioritizing the Complete Streets Master Plan. And that's where we're going to spend money actually going forward over the next few years, so that when we spend all these big buckets of money to improve our streets, we're going to do it in a way that actually improves how we get our students safely to school. And with the impact of the housing element, the impact of the bike lanes on El Camino, the impact of the bike lanes that will be coming on San Antonio, my expectation is that there's going to be a lot of incentive for more kids to bike to school than bike to school today. So I think we have to view the future and not just what's happened in the past.
Anybody else? Comments?
I can give a couple comments. Thanks, Steve. I just really want to echo, like you said, the presence, sustained presence of everybody from the community. And I think for myself, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I'm sure it's shared. We're trying our best to listen and really hear everyone's input, because it's clear that we've got decades of, serious, folks living here, but also, your own personal experience of how these streets work and where there may be safety issues, where there may be improvements that can be made. I don't think there's any way to recreate that without community input. And it seems clear, obviously, I don't think anybody here was around, but that somehow maybe not enough of that input happened in the last go round. And I think hopefully, if nothing else, hopefully definitely something else, but we can get that input from folks and really hear that and listen to that. So that as well. Also just really appreciate what staff has done. I think along with many other folks, I think had a lot of concerns and reservations about what we saw the first three options. And I think staff is obviously doing their best. And I think this is a process, it's an iterative process. And what I see in option 4 is a lot of listening and a lot of, obviously there was additional data gathering, and that takes work in and of itself. And so seeing that is really comforting to me that I think there is a process here where folks are taking into account input and trying to resolve issues. The other thing that remains clear to me is there just isn't a perfect answer for this set of intersections, right? And it's going to be a tough, reality period. And I think we should strive to understand where the biggest challenges are and where there's the biggest opportunity to make improvements right now. Bring more safety. I think safety isn't the only consideration, but it clearly is a very important consideration for just where we can improve things right now. And we're looking at high schoolers, we're looking at, kids, teens, and we want to make sure that, those folks are able to get in and out of school, while also obviously accommodating other folks that need to get up and down Jardin, and the other folks that need to be able to get in and out of their homes and live in this community and be comfortable. Trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to touch on here. I think a lot of what I was thinking was already echoed by other folks' statements. So maybe I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay.
Thanks, Rick.
I see option 4 that was just presented as very similar to what the pre-design was before it was changed. Unless Google Street View is incorrect, it's almost exactly. The only difference is there's a buffer zone between the bike lane and both lanes of traffic. So it seems like it reverts back. The area of conflict is still, I think, around the school entrance, which is in debate, right, for no left turn or having a crosswalk. I mean, I'm like, keep it simple. Don't over-engineer something initially, maybe consider maybe not including it, and then have a crosswalk engage the school to see if they can change pattern flows with bicyclists in other areas and proceed forward. And I believe in utilitarianism. So like, however you include the residents' feedback that are obviously negatively impacted from this is super important. We've heard it. And, get kids riding bikes is great. I'm a bicyclist, I love it too. And I don't know if there's any other studies or things that we could look at, because I've lived in San Francisco and Oakland before I lived here. People live in dense city configurations, schools, and people are parking, and they make it work with shared bike lanes. I guess I'm getting schooled on Los Altos' principles on like having separation between the two. But given Jardin is so small, without overstepping, I guess, principles, I could see there could be a short street, have a shared bike lane, making a little bit wider, because we're trying to squeeze a lot into a little spot. And that's the only problem I see right now, is that the buffer zone really makes it hard for cars to drive. And we live in America, cars are big, they're not small. We don't live in Europe. So I would just see that as like a bigger concern for us, is that maybe there's just too much in the buffer zone. If it's required legally, that's the part I think that maybe we have to consider. But the old design worked. So how do we take it with some small improvements to go back to?
Tom?
So, echoing like they're saying, thanks to the community and the staff. You guys were thrown into the hot water a lot because we had a lot of people leave here in the city manager, new transportation people. So that's always tough trying to catch up. And what's happened with a lot of the stuff is that, like Steve said, we had work on Almond that then forces other, people to change their habits. So looking at all that, and the priorities that this commission has changes. Like previously we had the Cuesta Street, that was a big issue, that was a higher priority. As we get those issues solved, we move on to other priorities. And that's part of the master plan. One of the things is that the accounts that you guys have taken, that's really a good way to do it. There's also 2 other counts, traffic counts that we've done in the past in the city. Several years ago was part of the traffic calming, and those are on the city website. It takes a little bit to find them, but they're out there. They didn't use cameras to my knowledge. I don't know what they actually used, but there is different data. It's more citywide, but I don't think it counts every street. But the goal of, the Vision Zero you said is really good, and other cities are doing that too. And I think one of the things that, like we're saying, probably can't really do a lot with, but somehow increasing the student parking, that would alleviate a lot of issues. How we do that, I don't know, that's from you guys internally with the city. But going forward, there's a lot of trade-offs, and you're not going to satisfy everybody. So you just have to try and work with the best that we can, and I think you guys are coming up with solutions to listen to folks. So that's really it. Chair.
All right. Thank you all. We'll come back for more discussions. Make some of my comments. I think that the work that was done on this project in the last few months has been significant. I think as people have mentioned this, the staff has been engaged with the community, and significant amount of input has gone into where we started off with all these different designs. And it's pretty clear that what's being proposed today is the best in terms of what we have, what we can do with the data and the public input that we can take into account. It seems like we may have reverted back to a design, but it's not really, because there's been significant safety improvements that have gone into this design. Some of the crosswalks, some of the issues that are to do with visibility in terms of turns, some of the striping for no parking, especially in the corners, that not only inconvenience the drivers, but the residents around the area, and causing, unnecessary parking in that area too. So I think there's been a lot of improvements, and I think this is a design that really brings a lot of that input into focus. There are 2 things. Obviously, we're trying to manage safety versus, it's obviously the parking is going to be a significant issue. Is it really a trade-off? Are we trading off one for the other? I don't think we have to solve both the problems. I don't think we can give up on safety to bring more parking in this area, or we cannot get rid of all of parking to say that, that includes the safety. So I think this is a very delicate balance. And I think the work that you have done, and it's clear that based on the inputs, I think the design that's proposed is quite reasonable, and that's how I feel. But having said that, Commissioner Katz mentioned this. Parking is something we'll have to address at some point, because you kind of push on this side, it's going to pull on that side, and there is inequity in terms of how you view parking. So I think has to be a significant effort, but it's not something that this commission can address. Us trying to do something in one area is going to create other problems that is not foreseen or under the purview of what we can do in terms of even forming a group or task force within our committee to be able to do that. And I don't think that's something that can be solved in a short amount of time. but it has to be a significant focus. And I think that's a recommendation that, the commission has made in the past by many commissioners, saying this is something that we have to look at. And this is not new. So I think that's an ongoing effort. Having said that, I think there's some things we can do from the design itself in terms of monitoring. I think the loading zone is always is a big question. Do we really need the loading zone there? Are we trading off parking for loading zone? But there's a significant safety aspect and residents' inconvenience in not having that loading zone there, because what it does is it pushes the the drop off and loading to the side streets, but we really don't want that happen. That's really what's happening now. It's creating dangerous situations for, residents walking in that area, even biking in that area. So I think, although the loading zone, is something that we want to have there, I think it's something that we should monitor, even though when I asked the question about what the plan for monitoring, I think there are 2 or 3 things that are critical. That is that loading zone effective? Is that loading zone causing additional issues? And I think that, maybe even with the camera, something for us to keep an eye on. The second thing is what I worry about is that right turn. Although the left turn is a safety concern, one thing that I do worry about is it pushing traffic into some of the other streets, and causing something downstream. And I think that's another thing. My recommendation would be to, leave the no left turn, monitor it to see if there are any issues. So these are the things that we could do to tweak some of the designs based on how things are going forward. Not so much a major redesign. I think monitoring this, maybe moving this loading zone to a different area, or adjusting the loading zone and trading off to parking. These are things that I think we can do going forward, because that doesn't affect the design so much. The last thing that I kind of want to mention was to minimize, if wherever possible, the striping, to minimize, there's some concern from the community that, it's sort of, out there and visible and so on. So as much as possible to reduce the widths where possible, and to do, not compromising safety, obviously, right? To reduce some of these things, if you can. It seems from the plan that there may be too many of these signs around. But I think once it's implemented, I don't think it's going to look as much if there are that many signs. That particular corner with Casita Way is an interesting, and I think seems like the data suggests that you have witnessed some near collisions. There have been some near collisions that I don't know why for whatever reasons, but it's not a risk that we can take. Even if that left turn is not sufficient, I think having a crossing guard is something that we should consider. I'm not sure what the plan is for that. Although we don't have a formal crossing guard plan, I think, but that's something that we should definitely consider in that area, because that could increase safety and reduce chances of collisions. So that's kind of all the high level comments I had. In terms of how we want to direct the staff going forward. Obviously, we have a discussion following this to see if we want to form a committee to, discuss this any further. But I would like to see, maybe if someone wants to make a motion to make a recommendation. It doesn't have to be a motion, but if we are all okay with making recommendations to move forward, that would be sufficient for staff. Yes. We could do that, but we could still go back and have a discussion about the subcommittee after that too. So I'd like to maybe open up that for discussion.
I'd just like to ask a point of clarification. When I read the detail in the ad hoc committee process, it basically, my takeaway is that if we make a recommendation to move forward, then that precludes the ad hoc committee. That the ad hoc committee is, unless I'm misinterpreting what it says in here, right? The ad hoc committee is really if, as a commission, we feel like we can't move forward, right, without an ad hoc committee. Is that your interpretation?
That's my interpretation, yes. Okay. because, it's specifically for this particular design project and it's not a scope outside of the design project. Yes. For example, if you say the subcommittee wants to look at parking, that's not something we can do. Yeah, and this is specifically to do with that particular design.
So then the question I have is, do we have a discussion first? Or do we, make a motion to, move forward with the recommendation as a way of, proceeding?
Yeah, that's a good question. We can come back to, we can come back to this, but I would rather have this motion because I think we have all the data we have. And I think we should probably try to make a recommendation if we can, on the item, and then we can come back to the ad hoc committee, because I don't think we should preclude this decision based on what the ad hoc committee might be or might not be, because that doesn't make sense.
So then the one question I'd have of staff is that if we make a motion to move forward with the recommendation, what are the next steps that would take place?
The next steps will include preparing the documents that include Jardine as part of the annual street resurfacing for this summer. And then after the bid package is advertised and we get the low responsible bidder, then we go to city council with the entire package for award of the contract.
Just one clarification. I thought we were going to make a recommendation, but the final would be the next commission meeting. You would come back with the final plan at the next week's commission meeting, where we do a final recommendation. Is that correct?
If that's what the CSC would like to do, you can do that because the next meeting is next week.
Yes.
And if you say staff, please make these changes, bring it back, and then we can make the recommendation then. That's an option, yes.
That is an option, so, take additional comments, suggestions?
The day before, we have the city council meeting, right?
That's different. That's a different meeting.
Well, it's a different meeting, but are they not gonna talk about?
No, that's a. The purpose of that meeting is for discussing a work plan, and the city's, strategies and how it works with our work plan. Yeah. Although the city council may bring it up, so for questions.
Well, there's 4 other commissions, or 3 other commissions also presenting there too.
Clarification. So in an ad hoc committee, which I've proposed, is it just consist of the commission members and city staff, or do residents, or are they allowed to?
I'll let, I have some comments, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for the ad hoc subcommittee, then you pick minorities. So from your 7, you do 2 or 3. And then the ad hoc committee, staff is not part of the ad hoc committee, but we would have some meetings, with staff and ad hoc. And then the ad hoc would be responsible if you want to engage a couple of residents, a couple of school officials, then that's, you would contact them to form that group.
So just so clarification, it's primarily a subcommittee of the commission. And the staff time is at their discretion to support any work. The community members that you might recruit or in any school. The community, for example, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I just wanted to emphasize, it's not, the ad hoc committee is a minority. You don't have to do the Brown Act noticing, and that you can meet at your convenience whenever you think is necessary with the ad hoc. And then the residents, again, when you select the residents, they will not be speaking on behalf or representing the entire community. They're gonna give their input. So that's very important to keep in mind. Thank you.
So you have the ad hoc meeting, if you don't approve the proposal today. It's one or the other?
So my understanding from the CSC is that the interest of forming the ad hoc subcommittee was to, like, if you're not agreeing with the recommended option and you wanted to do something different or explore other things as the group, as a subcommittee, and then meet with the staff and then bring a recommendation to the CSC. Correct.
So it's, you really do one of the other.
Yes.
Or neither. Or neither,
But
yes.
not, but not both.
But it doesn't, we can't ultimately approve what most or all of what we see today, but you would have an additional process, right? Is that fair to say?
Sorry, very fast.
The ad hoc subcommittee could be formed, could meet, could take input, could deliberate, and could come back and say, we like what we've seen here today, but there would be some time passing.
Yes,
So,
that would be, my suspicion would be there would be significant.
Oh, I was saying, it's not both.
Correct.
You do one or the other.
Yeah.
Well, there's a third, it seems there's a third alternative, which would be to have a motion to have the final presentation done at our commission meeting next Tuesday, right? And then if we don't agree that that makes sense, we can then form the ad hoc committee. Or do you think that it has to be done tonight if we're gonna do it?
Well, we can notice again for a second meeting. That's an option, and.
It would have to be added to the agenda in order for it to be an option for you to form the subcommittee. So, yeah, you would have to agendize it again.
Right, you actually next.
Not on the agenda.
We can add it to the agenda. So I was just gonna clarify a couple of the things on the subcommittee is, the problem statement has to be very clear as to what the subcommittee is going to work on, what it's going to come back with. It cannot be very generic, so that's where it's specific. And second is, it has to be either 2 or 3 people. I think that's pretty clear. So it has to be minimum 2 in the subcommittee. But yeah, so we can come back to it again, of course, but I think I'd like to bring the focus back to the design that we have at hand and see if we're ready to make a recommendation. Comments, if we're not ready to make a recommendation today, we have comments for them to come back with clarification comments, and then we can make a final recommendation at the next, at the CSE meeting on Wednesday. So that is an option. So, and then based on that, we can go and we can talk about the subcommittee after, okay? All right, recommendations, comments, do we have a motion?
Well, I guess I'll make a recommendation, in a version of 4.1, call it. Come back to our meeting next week with plans to remove the no turn on Casita Way. If that's not already included, that would be my recommendation. And then consider other ways to mitigate or reduce striping or signage to account for just the local residents having to view extra paint, but also while keeping safety as a priority. Those would be my 2 things.
Thank you, Steve. Yep, anybody else?
I'm gonna pass for now. I'm gonna think about it.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, good. So seems like we have a bunch of different comments, right? And I would like to make a motion to consider this as a design we move forward with, pending a bunch of different inputs that we have today. And the reason why I'm saying this is safety is our number one concern at this point. This is the way we have it now. It's not something that we can leave because we know there are significant safety concerns and it's causing a lot of hardship for the residents around. So this is not something we can tell. And we have gone through a bunch of different designs at this point. The big concern I know from all the residents is parking. We're pushing parking, and I think that's a pain point, and I recognize that. And that's something we have to address. But also it's in our purview that we have safe multimodal transportation available on our streets. And I think this design goes a long way in addressing that. The question is, what additional inputs can we gather to improve this design? There's one thing that we may want to consider is, and I want to leave that open, which I don't support, is to have a shared bike and car lane on that street. I think that's I think, we're creating probably a more unsafe situation. It's, given the way the traffic and given the people, the way they drive on that street, I feel it's something maybe we're going backwards and not in the spirit of where we want to go, especially want to provide the connectivity and so on. So I think the design that we have, I feel is pretty robust in that sense. But how do we address parking is something that we have to make a recommendation, I think, to the staff, and in whatever form we can bring it up. I think we all feel pretty strongly about this. So, we have a bunch of different comments. At least I would like to make a proposal that we recommend this design. Or at least bring back to the commission on Wednesday with some of the inputs that we have heard today, for final consideration.
I would second that. If that recommendation is a motion, I would second.
It's not a motion, but it's a recommendation, because I don't think we can make a motion today. We can make a motion on Wednesday, so prepare. Yeah.
One thing I was gonna say is, I haven't heard anything from Art. And so I wonder what his input has been.
I'm just listening.
You gotta have an opinion if it's your department.
We all have an opinion, right? So, what we did from October when I first started, from now, is it was a process, right? I'm new to this community. I live in Cupertino, so we're completely different. If you know that side, they love their bike lanes. They actually don't mind lines. I know, and they love their sidewalks. Here, when I came here, well, I went to Mountain High School, so I was very familiar with Los Altos. I actually never drove this side because it was too dark. There was no sidewalks, so we always stayed in that side, in Mountain View. But
We were there in high school.
I don't know about that, but what I like is actually the community. They're very involved. Because I know, from my fault, I don't go to these commissions in Cupertino. I live in Cupertino. I don't know what's going on until something comes. That's nice to see the communities actually involved. Especially any design. I think most of the time is we decide, we put something there without their input. It's already been discussed, right? It's gone through the councils, been through commissions. But until, they see it, they don't have any comments, right? And I think that's the problem. So, and then they tell you, why did you guys put these lines, you guys didn't tell us about? You didn't knock on our door and, tell us, face to face that you're gonna put these lines. So the main things, I like this community, the feedback, getting back, and that's what we did actually. So, we don't know how the decision was done because we don't have the background, right? We have a new public works director, new team, new consultant. We got practically new. So we did analyze the problem. We heard from the residents. We actually met with the residents out with the PD to discuss their problems. So it's not like we didn't get feedback from them, right? So that's the first initial thing. The last, we had a community meeting. We have a special meeting. So we've had these extra meetings to discuss this one project, which we actually have, the city actually has a lot of projects in the works that we can't even concentrate on because we're just working, that's the problem for this project, right? But we definitely know the concern, we know the problem, but we definitely want to start looking at not just Jordan, all the schools, all the connectivity. There's a lot of projects in the works, which is going to be great, for Los Altos, El Camino, right? That's in the pipe, it's basically coming, starting from Palo Alto to us, and then you got San Antonio. So these things are going to be all integrated together. So the main thing is, we've done diligence, listening to the public, getting feedback, bringing it for discussion, brought some designs, which, some choices. So we got people actually got to pick, 1, 2, or 3, right? And actually from the count, it was actually all even. So it wasn't like one thing, which is 1, that's it. It was actually pretty even, all 3. So now we got all the feedback. We actually had
We actually should have called it, that's actually our fault. We shouldn't call concept 4. We should actually said this is a recommendation. We were pushed and rushed actually to get this data and all that stuff. But we actually got it done, because I know you gave us a short time, get us data. We didn't have that much time. We actually called quality counts last minute and they actually opened the window for us. They were actually, and that was the week right before, the holidays. So we got them in, got it on Thursday, which didn't rain because it was raining Wednesday night. So we thought we were going to cancel it. So we weren't going to have data tonight. But it cleared up, so we got the data. We had to upload because the thing with commissions, I'm learning still, is you got to upload everything 72 hours before, so the commissions and the public could review the agenda and the packet and all that stuff. We got to talk to Derek Tuesday. We got the data on Tuesday. So we actually got more stuff and we need to, and we got videos. If you guys see, I don't know if we could share the videos. I don't know if that's even, a thing, but you guys would see how bad it is on a Thursday, at that, especially that casita. That's when, Don says, maybe we should restrict that left turn because that's actually an important area because we found out from Derek, that's where most kids enter from the north side, is casita. That's the area right there. So we were trying, that's actually a huge safety. We saw a lot of near misses on that camera. It was scary. So I think this is a great great design. We got all the feedback. We did all the stuff that needs to do. So everybody, knows what we're doing. We're not just putting it out there and doing it. So we got everybody's feedback, we got the commission, and hopefully you guys recommend that, this recommended design. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, just one comment, which is that what's been going on in the back of my mind is that, and Art, thank you for those comments because they're actually really were helpful. In thinking back what the police department said about the fact that there was a lot of misbehavior and they really couldn't even enforce what they needed to enforce because it was not, the design was confusing. That's there right now. Gives me a sense of urgency to want to do something, right? Rather than just let it linger. And that's why I like Suresh's proposal, which is to move forward with the recommendation and with an understanding that that changes can be made if it isn't perfect. And the reality is it isn't going to be perfect because it's a complex enough situation that nothing will be perfect. But I think it's a major improvement on the safety side over what we've got today and the other plans that we were presented. So that's my personal opinion.
Any other comments, final comments? Oh, okay, good. So staff, I think you have a general recommendations from the commission for the plan. So why don't we bring it back with all the final inputs? Is there any clarification on any of the stuff that you heard today that you would like?
So I heard one commissioner say, get rid of what you're proposing of the no left turn. Is that the majority or should we keep it or should we not?
I would like to hear maybe what you may want to say about it.
Thank you, and thanks for considering the recommendation. So the left turn, turn restriction was not an easy or light decision that we took. Like just throw it in there. It was with site visits, additional traffic counts, and video footage showing what is actually happening there. When drivers don't think PD or city staff are watching or high school, principal or staff is present. So in its natural flow of traffic, that location is it's very unsafe. So the left turn restrictions are a safety recommendation that I would like to stay and keep. In terms of my only comment was when regarding the less striping, I think my takeaway is, the yellow crosswalks, can we reevaluate the necessary widths and make sure we're not going overboard or beyond what is kind of like the standard? So and you know, that's a great point because we haven't actually measured the width, of, like what's out there right now, or, so we could, we'll look at that again. I'll, ensure that the crosswalks are per MUTCD minimum standards and not necessarily extreme. If that'll be one place we could save paint. A lot of the tick marks and hatches, because Aida had given me that direction as well. In this revision, we almost like went every other one and we start removing stripes. Then we did another round of remove even one more. So what you're seeing is like just a few to say this area is hatched, no parking, and a couple tick marks that say bicyclists should know that a car may now cross in front of them to get out. And I think all of us, especially in this community, I think that this great resident that collected data, sent the table, sent his raw data, and it was so impressive. I'm like, do you want to join the team? Because, you know, I may just send all the files to him. So it's like Art mentioned, it's so great to have such an informative community that's not only involved, but highly educated, and they understand data, they understand what data represents. So continuing the evaluation of this corridor is, like, I guess you have our word that it would continue. Like any project, you want to know that it's working. If it's not working, why is it not working? And I love the suggestion that PD is limited, although we keep pointing to PD. PD will not be standing at Jardine for the years to come. They'll spot check. If we have issues, they'll probably maybe park a vehicle. And it takes the rest of us, including the school, to really help with enforcement. And so I hope, you know, I hope we could help move that enforcement piece. But I think I understand the updates that are being requested.
Just to clarify on the left turn, I think the monitoring after the left turn, I think is prohibiting the left turn. If we decide to go with it, monitoring it afterwards, I think is critical because we want to understand the pressure that puts on the side streets. And if, you know, and if there are any repercussions because of that. So that's, you know, that was my recommendation on that, so, yeah. And if there's a possibility to see if there's a crossing guard program that can be instituted instead. I think that would go a long way as well, so. Yeah, any other comments before we go to the next item in the agenda? Okay, sure. All right, so that's about all on this. Let me close the agenda item. Anybody wants to take a break, or should we just plow on? 5 minutes, okay. Plow on, okay, all right, we're on the next item. All right, next item on the agenda is forming an ad hoc subcommittee to consider whether we want to make additional recommendations on the Jardine design project. So, you know, we can have a discussion about it. And if there's some strong feeling as we want to do this, then we want to talk about what it is that we want to do and what we'll accomplish and how long that might take. I think those are all critical components of what we want to do, especially given that, you know, what we have discussed this far, what's the utility of this, and let's be pretty clear, so have a sort of robust discussion. I think, Scott, you had originally proposed this thing, and maybe you want to kick off the discussion.
Yeah, initially the intent was to fast track or bring in community's feedback into this process, which we've had this meeting and a prior meeting with community input. And so my hope was to make sure that the residents and the people impacted are heard, listened to, and considered in the various approaches. So as of now, I feel like we've at least been digesting it all. So I would make a motion to postpone this agenda item to next week's meeting for the review. And if needed, if something critical comes up that's a blocker, then we would be able to reconsider it as a commission.
Okay.
So I make a motion to, unless there's an objection, I make a motion to move it to next week's meeting.
Any discussions, anything else that you want to add to that? No, I just wanted to add, I wanted to add a critical, again, going back to this issue, and I think I heard from many residents that the reason why people are so keen on putting more focus and more work on this is to alleviate the parking problem. And I think, I think a lot more community input needs to come in for us to be able to address parking in general in this area and maybe in many parts of the city. So I'm afraid that I don't think our, even if you form a subcommittee, we would be able to address anything that would be reasonable. I don't think even we can make a recommendation. I think this is a project that requires probably a task force of multiple agencies within our agency to be able to do that, and input from the city council and significant public input. And I think it would be a disservice for us to try to address that even in this, in the subcommittee within our commission. So I think I agree, Scott. I think I can agree with what you're saying. Let's look at the final plan next week. And it seems like we're almost there in terms of how we want to move forward, pending some of the other things that you may want to look at. And if we still feel at the end of that there's major questions and concerns, then we could come back and revisit this. But I think I support. Do I need a motion for this, or do we put it on the agenda?
So you just have to agendize it for next time,
Okay.
if there's a motion for that.
Okay, all right, so anybody wants to second his motion or make modifications to his motion?
I'll second it. Don't need to
Okay,
modify it.
all right, so you may want to call a roll for that.
Can you restate the motion?
You will. Yeah.
Thank you.
The motion was to move this agenda item to next week's meeting for further consideration and review.
And then who seconds
I
that?
second that.
Commissioner Owens, forward.
You want to take the roll? Yes.
You make the vote. Okay, you take the vote. Commissioner Schneid? Commissioner Katz?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay.
We have a motion, motion to move it, postpone for next week?
Yeah.
Put it on the agenda.
For next week,
Yes.
yeah.
Chair, can I ask a clarifying question of board restrictor?
About,
How would the people that have raised the issue of parking, who would they approach in the city so they don't
That's
have
a very good
to
question,
chase
yeah.
them down? Who would they ultimately approach, or who would they work with to?
And then Ms. Ray answered the question based on what Vice Principal Derek mentioned. He said that once construction is done and also he's working on issuing more permits, I'm anticipating that the parking issue would get better. Could you speak to that, Vice Principal? Do you agree with my statement?
I don't know that that's gonna solve the problem.
It would help some, right?
I don't know, but yeah.
Okay. So it would be a parking study that would need to be done for a specific area, and budget would need to be allocated. So the CSC would need to, in the work plan, you can include that as part of the, your recommendation to city council that you would like a study done, because there's not citywide parking plan. There's not, so in areas, if there's a study that is warranted, then you can bring that up.
Scott. So I wasn't sure if your question, you were trying to get at, how would the CSC make it part of our work plan? Maybe that was what you were suggesting.
No, how
But I think-
do citizens approach this? Because if I understood correctly, the citizens around Almond Street and the adjacent streets raised this issue and got action from the city. What actions would citizens need to take in order to find a peaceful solution for them to mitigate parking on their street?
So, my understanding is that if there's an issue or a specific request, then there's an email sent to the transportation division. Transportation with, the consultant would take a look at the area and do some, study that area. But if there's a bigger area study, there's more involved, and maybe, a larger budget needs to be in place.
why don't we do it by email? I think for procedure, I'm not able to take comments at this time. So we'll do it by email. And please send us an email to the commission and the staff with your thoughts. I think I know what you're thinking, so, yes.
I think you're thinking the right thing. Add a thing, two or more.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, great. All right. I don't think I'm gonna have anything else on the agenda today. We'll wait for the commission for for any other reports and staff reports and so on, so if there's no that, I think I'm gonna call the meeting to close at 9:23 PM. All right.
Wow. Oh, did it.